Good evening, everyone. Today is May 22nd, and I'll call this meeting of the Mount Juliet Board of Commissioners to order. We have a quorum present according to city code, and we'll proceed with conducting the business of the city. If there's no objection, the agenda will be set as published. Hearing and seeing no objections, the agenda is set as published. We have a 167-page packet to go through, 3 items on unfinished business, 5 items under new business. If you're in the audience sitting out here, we've got agendas in the wire basket if you'd like to follow along. If you're online, the agenda is available as well on the city website. Our next item is our invocation and pledge of allegiance. I saw our Chief Hambrick. There you are. If you would, sir, please lead us in the invocation and pledge, sir.
Let's pray together. Father God, we come to you to give you thanks, Lord, for this glorious day. Lord, we ask that you would just bless in our proceedings tonight. We ask that you would bless, Lord, our Board of Commissioners, Lord, our staff in our city. Lord, we're grateful for your care of us and, Lord, to be able to be blessed to live in such a city. So we thank you, Lord. We pray that we will continue to have hearts of service, Lord, to where we serve our fellow man with dignity, respect, and with honor. We thank you for what we've just witnessed with the police and the EMT and firefighters, Lord, and their recognition. Lord, we pray that we will continuously just go about the business of serving others before self. So we give you the glory. We ask that you forgive us of our sin and where we fail you. And Lord, we just ask you now that you would just again bless here today as we yield to you. We love you, Lord, and we honor you this day. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Let's stand for our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. This is from our May 8th meeting. Have a motion and a second. The minutes are on the table. Any corrections or comments? All right, all in favor of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The minutes carry as presented. Next item on the agenda is our citizen comments. We reserve the right to terminate any comments if they become abusive. But other than that, we will open the floor up to anything you would like to address. Just ask that you keep it on to topic. We'll recognize you for 3 minutes. This is pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 220 of City Code. Unfortunately, sometimes this job requires me to enforce the limitations on the minutes. Nothing personal, but we'll recognize you for 3 minutes. I just ask you to state your name and address for the record.
All right. Hello, everybody. Don't know if you can hear me. I'm not good with mics.
You're good.
Hi, my name is Jessica Needham Scales. I live at 12425 Lebanon Road here in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I'm here from Needham's Nursery to invite everyone to our Memorial Day fireworks show, which is next Monday, May 29th. The fireworks will be shot from Circle P Ranch around 8:30 p.m. I am also here to let you know that after 3 years of paperwork, red tape, and coordination efforts with the United States military, including the Air Force and the Marine Corps, I'm pleased to announce that Needham's Nursery has secured a military flyover prior to Memorial Day fireworks show. This is bearing no weather or mechanical issues, of course, but they should be flying over for us before the show. We hope the whole town shows up to witness this amazing event and to show our military support for all the fallen local heroes, like Tyler Cates, who once worked at Needham's Nursery with us, and whom the Mount Juliet American Legion is named for. We must always remember that Memorial Day is a day to remember those who have died in service to our country. And thanks for listening to me. Hope you have a blessed night, and I hope everybody comes to the show on Monday.
Thank you for your comments. That's very, very impressive to secure the flyover. So,
Took 3 years, so
wow.
hopefully everything works out.
Well, we'll be praying for good weather.
Thank you.
Buchanan, 58 Hatcher Road. My question is about Hatcher Road and 011 the Dirt Road. Who is marking or who is surveying the road to be widened, and what part does Hatcher Road play into the format?
We can, somebody here, Matt, is that something you can take on?
Right. All right. Well, the reason I'm concerned, my mother-in-law is 92 years old and she's worried to death. And I heard the meeting was tonight. We do have a meeting with Matt tomorrow. They're going to take where the stakes are at, where the road to be coming through, not just the slope, but it's going to come through her sunroom that we built maybe 10 years ago. She's been there for 70 some odd years, and she's worried to death that she's going to lose her home. With the water department taking 20 feet plus another 10, and then the city, and the surveyor told us that they had to get it surveyed before Friday, and they was going to make it something pretty. We've been there for a long time, and it ain't about pretty when you're taking a 92-year-old woman's house. So I just beg you, think about what we're doing before we do it. God bless.
All right. Thank you, sir. Name and
Hi.
address, please.
Chelsea Williams, 301 Croft Way. And my husband and I are both Wilson County natives. We moved to Murfreesboro after college and on to Nashville after that, but we are so proud that we have made our way back to Wilson County and that our family is raising our family, that we're raising our family here in Mount Juliet. I'm also a small business owner and my company is based here in Mount Juliet. So I want you to know that I understand the importance of strengthening our local community through revenue generation, job creation, and by paying taxes. I'm also a mother of a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. We lived in Jackson Hills, and when we first moved to the neighborhood, we were regularly having food trucks, at least once a month. My family always looked forward to food truck night. And while we loved supporting our local restaurants, I'm not sure if you guys have ever been to a restaurant with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's not enjoyable for anybody, not even the people who work there. So after a long day of school and work, I'm not going to take my children to a local restaurant. A food truck, on the other hand, is the perfect opportunity to get out of the house, eat some delicious food, meet our neighbors, and give me a break from cooking. Many of the food trucks that our neighborhood hosted introduced our kids to culturally diverse foods that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Taste of Aloha, for example, we tried Spam rolls and hula hula chicken. And we had another truck in the neighborhood that served empanadas. And my daughter can't stop talking about empanadas. Jackson Hills also did a great job at having the food trucks in a central location like the clubhouse. There are picnic tables, a playground, and it's a great way for residents to engage and get to know your neighbors. Last year on Cinco de Mayo, we had a food truck, and my husband saw one of his coworkers all the way in Brentwood who lives in our neighborhood. And we would not have known that if we wouldn't have seen him there. So I understand that some of the council members are worried about food trucks affecting the brick and mortar businesses, but I can assure you it will not have a large impact. People come to Mount Juliet and choose these restaurants from all over our city, along with close cities that don't have as many food options. Donaldson, Hermitage, Lebanon, Watertown. Food trucks would most likely be serving the local neighborhoods on the select nights that they are there. And I spoke to 2 local restaurant owners, Emma, the manager at the paper mill, and she said that she believes food trucks coming to Mount Juliet is great, and she believes in supporting small businesses. And Callie, the manager of the Barrow House, echoed these sentiments and said she isn't worried about food trucks taking away their business. And let's not forget about my family's very favorite restaurant on the north side of town, Hibachi Jr., which started as a food truck, which my husband and I used to frequent downtown on Food Truck Thursdays. And now they're here. And they've actually opened another location in Gallatin because they've been so wildly successful. Nashville's ranked 10th in the country for food trucks based on data from Food Truck Nation. Mount Juliet directly benefits from Nashville's growth and plays a huge part of the city's expansion over the county line. And we don't want to get left behind because we're not willing to adapt. The city is large enough to support brick and mortar restaurants and food trucks. It's not an either or situation. And I know that many residents of local neighborhoods, including myself, would be happy to support your efforts in making sure that obtaining a food truck permit is easy and accessible, so we can all support these local business or small businesses while making sure they are also contributing to our local community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really nervous. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You'd think as a teacher, I wouldn't be nervous to get up here and speak in front of y'all.
Can I get your name and address for the record?
Yes. My name is Stephanie Hall, and I am at 890 Powson Road, Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
you.
I also live in Jackson Hills, and I'm speaking on food trucks tonight. Thank you, Mayor Manus and valued commissioners, for allowing community comments. I've been a resident of Mount Juliet for 14 years. I am coming to you tonight to speak for amending the ordinance to allow food trucks to more easily operate in the city. I have lived in Jackson Hills for 2.5 years, and I have volunteered with our social committee for over 3. I joined prior to moving as I wanted to help build camaraderie in our community. I now serve as the board liaison to the social committee, and I also serve on the Jackson Hills Board of Directors HOA as the secretary. Sorry. Out of all the community comments that I receive in the top 5, whether it be talking about weeds in the neighborhood, food trucks are one of the most talked about conversations. We have quite the following in our neighborhood, as we have 346 community members in our food truck committee, and we have worked really hard to try and incorporate food trucks to our events within the social committee and HOA. It brings camaraderie within our community and allows neighbors to mingle more freely without having to worry about an event and cleaning houses. As my fellow resident Chelsea mentioned, Nashville is ranked in the top 10 out of the top 20 list of the nation for food truck following an operation. Mount Juliet is known for supporting small business and local businesses. We should support food trucks and allow them to come into our communities more easily. Hibachi Jr. is also a brick and mortar, and it was once a food truck. I appreciate your time and letting me speak to you tonight. If you have any questions, I can speak on behalf of the HOA.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else for citizen comments? All right, seeing none, we will close citizen comments and move to commissioner reports and comments. With this, I'll recognize Commissioner Justice.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I want to say congratulations and thanks to the EMS workers. I think our newest station on North Green Hill Road went live today about 7 o'clock this morning. It's been a lot of work, a lot of effort has gone into getting this place built to provide for fire, rescue, and now EMS, or emergency medical service, and to come out of that location. So Chief Newman, Chief Edwards, thank y'all. Very, very importantly, in my heart, I want to say a big, huge thank you to our former chief, Jamie Luffman, who we would be nowhere near where we are right now without his efforts. And so, we need to make sure and love on him when we get a chance to for everything that he was able to accomplish while he was in that role. I've had numerous people that have reached out talking about the growth in Mount Juliet. And there's a lot of misconceptions, and I'm hoping somebody will take this and maybe. Are you going to be okay? I can see.
I just think I know what you've got your hands on.
No, probably not. No, actually, I would like to point out that the city of Mount Juliet, most certainly not the commissioners of the city of Mount Juliet, we don't have anything to do with restaurants. The restaurant being built on Lebanon Road. We don't go out and recruit these people and beg them to come to Mount Juliet. That is not what the role of government is. Okay. When they get here and they come in and they ask for, to go through the process to get put in place, then, we have Ms. Hamlin and Mr. Kirk and Matt White and the others up at Public Works that will assist them in the process of getting open. And we want successful restaurants in Mount Juliet, but we don't build restaurants. We don't build office buildings unless it happens to be a city hall or something that is directly governmentally related. So when we see the social media onslaught that says we want Costco. Okay, the first time I saw that was on incredibly unhip Mount Juliet. I renamed that, by the way. I saw that we wanted Costco, and my response was, okay, go buy the land, build it, and I'll support you 100%. Obviously, that didn't happen 7 or 8 years ago when I first started, but now they're here. I would like to say that they're here because they have such a great board of commissioners, but that's just not the case either. What we've got is we've got a citizenry that really loves the community. Jackson Hills is here tonight in support of the food trucks and things of that nature. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care about what happened in your city, would you? That's the whole idea. We've got a really great city here. We did not build Costco. All right. They're here of their own volition. We had nothing to do with it. We set land use and we set zoning. And then once everything is in place, we help these people be successful to the best of our ability. The role of government as we see it, I think I'm speaking for the others, and y'all disagree with me if you want to, is get out of the way and let these people be successful, because government gets in the way. It doesn't promote an effective use of anybody's time. So just kind of a civics lesson here, so that, and if anybody wants to share this on Unhip Mountain Juliet, you please feel free to. We have no problem with that. I'm going to ask also our city manager, Kenny Martin. I received this text from Mr. Kyle Jarrett a few minutes ago. Our Green Hill High School girls are going to the state tomorrow. And what we'd like to do, if we could, in honor of that, is to turn the lights on the clock tower green for them overnight, and wish them lots of luck. Fantastic team. And I'm looking to see, by the way, one thing that there was actually a comment made about Nashville or Mount Juliet benefiting from Nashville. That's not really true. It's not your fault. It's just, something it's a rumor that got out. Actually, Nashville benefits from Mount Juliet's existence. It's just the way we in Mount Juliet for 60 years have looked at it. We allow them to come over and visit us from time to time. So, Mayor, I'm done. Thank you very much.
That is correct. Nashville is a suburb of Mount Juliet.
That is correct. Yes.
With that, I'll recognize our Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you to the families that came out tonight. Also for all the calls this past couple weeks. There's obviously, as we're rolling into the summer weather, it's great to see so many people out. They're starting to, start asking questions, get involved with all the different activities that our city's, involved with. It was great today to see some of the new highlights with the 4th of July. So that's great. I would like to congratulate all the students. I've got some nieces and nephews and some cousins, and of course some neighbors that have all graduated this past week. I'm not going to steal any thunder from anybody up here, but it's just great to see our students, take off into that next chapter. Wish them well. So anybody that is deciding to not do anything tonight that's watching, for the students, if you guys are wanting to look at what government's doing, we wish you well. The EMS, obviously, this team, and I will mirror exactly what Commissioner Justice stated, between the staff and the support of our other agencies. I'll tell you, folks, we couldn't have a better first responders. It was just such an honor to see all the men and women that came up today, just to see what they've done to, just impact our city and take care of us. Many of us always take it for granted when it comes down to, when there's an emergency, we all tend to run out of the building, but here it is. These men and women are running into the building. So I never take it for granted. I always make sure I go out of my way to thank them every time I see them, if they're in uniform and so forth. I would like to highlight, obviously, our parks. We do have a movie night coming up, 8:30 on June 2nd. For all the family and friends that have made it out for the past movie nights, they've always been successful. It's a great time to meet your neighbors, just like with some of the other communities over there. They will have some food trucks out there, so it's great to see that, as well as an opportunity to kind of see what else is being brought to our city. So looking forward to see so many of you out there. I would also like to thank our staff, including Miss Dana, our Public Works team. When they, as we're going through the budget these last couple days and last week and a half, 2 weeks, and a few more days after tonight, it's just they've got their own jobs, and I would like to highlight all of their attention and all the detail, folks, outside of the first responders when it comes to our different departments. By far, I will go out to bat for them. They're amazing. They're very responsive. Even as a citizen, I've had to call and just, ask simple questions within different departments for my own house and so forth. And just not even calling that, the Batman phone, so to speak. It's just calling the regular public number and just seeing that, it doesn't matter, if you're part of a board up here, if you're just a citizen, you get the same service. So that just tells me we're a first class city and we got first class staff. So I just want to just give kudos out there to so many of you, mainly Dana, because she took my call. I asked for 30 minutes today. I think I took about a little bit more than an hour of her time, but it's just great to know that, that they are doing a great job for us. So Mayor, that concludes my report, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. We recognize Commissioner Hefner.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to congratulate all the seniors for graduation. Big accomplishment, moving on to bigger and better things, I'm sure. So good luck in the future. Also want to congratulate all of the Mount Juliet Best of winners. Over the past couple of weeks, that was announced, finalists and winners. So congratulations to all of you that won, and we're also finalists. I do appreciate all the votes that I received. So big thanks for those that voted for me in the new category of Best Elected Official. I didn't even know that was a thing. But anyways, I want to thank everybody for their votes there. Also want to thank emergency services, EMT, police, and fire. What a tremendous job you guys do, and the proof we're saving lives. I mean, that's just it's just unbelievable. And big thanks to ex-chief Jamie Luffman for getting this thing started 10 years ago and building the ambulance along with the support and the experience of Chief. Appreciate your Newman, appreciate your contributions there as well. So Memorial Day, let's not forget what Memorial Day is about. It's about honoring those that died in the line of service. I know that's coming up this weekend, so do please keep those family members in your thoughts and prayers as we go over the weekend celebrating. I also do want to thank Dana and Kenny Martin and department heads for the hard work that went into putting the budget together. I know it's a daunting task, I'm sure. We don't always get to see behind the scenes, but I can just imagine the numerous and countless meetings that you'll go to get it to this stage. So I do want to acknowledge you and the department heads for a lot of thought and effort that went into that. I do have food trucks on the agenda tonight. We're going to discuss. It was deferred last BOC meeting. There were some changes I want to mention now, which we'll get into more details. But one of the concerns that was mentioned that was unfair. I think it was what was mentioned. It was unfair that the non-HOA neighborhoods were being left out. That certainly was not my intention. I think we've got some modified language that will allow, if it's passed, to allow food trucks in non-HOA neighborhoods. My biggest concern was just the public safety and food trucks not parking in the street. So having private property to park on non-connector roads was something that we've incorporated as a red line change. So I do appreciate that. I did address the licensing fee for the food trucks. Again, my intention there was to cover the sales tax revenue that we would be losing otherwise, and also to help offset the administrative costs, but also make it fair and reasonable for a food truck to buy a license, obtain a license, and operate in a neighborhood, so in a community. So good changes. I hope I get support from the commission on that. Certainly open to making modifications and changes. So appreciate the consideration, and that concludes my report. Oh, I also want to thank everybody that came out. Jackson Hills representing. Should have named this food truck ordinance Jackson Hill Food Truck Ordinance, because I know it's a no, actually there's quite a few neighborhoods, come to find out, but it was Jackson Gallagher that approached me over 3 years ago when I was decided to run for office, and one of the first things he mentioned, he goes, if you get elected, will you please put food truck ordinance in front of the VOC? And I said, absolutely. Makes sense to me. So anyways, thank everybody for coming out. Thank everybody for watching. My wife's probably listening, so appreciate you tuning in. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Mullally?
Thank you. My next newsletter goes out next week on the 1st. Well, the 1st. And also congratulations to all the graduates, whether it's little kindergarteners or high school or college. So at whatever level you are, congratulations to everyone. And again, congratulations to all the EMS workers, and just really appreciate them. And as the chief said, this is EMS week, and so National EMS Week. So we recognize all them. Speaking of food trucks, we Farmers Market in Charlie Daniels Park on Charlie Daniels Parkway, starting last Saturday, is incorporating some vendors and food trucks there as well. So that's every Saturday morning from 7 a.m. I think it's till 7 to 1, I believe. New fire hall on across from Green Hills. We're having the ribbon cutting there, so everyone is welcome to come. That's on June 7th. It's a Wednesday at 3 p.m. So that we're really excited about that. It's been a long time coming. Just one little word about food trucks. We are up here to represent taxpayers. That's correct. But we also have an obligation as a seated board member to make sure that our revenue sources are not put in jeopardy. So it's a twofold there. So I just wanted to point that out. This is going to cost the city a lot of money, including the hiring of a new planning tech with a vehicle. It's going to be over $100,000. The city gets no sales tax from food trucks unless the food truck is based in Mount Juliet. And I don't know, I don't have a list of how many are and how many are not, but I would imagine if this thing is passed, most of them is going to be either county or out of county. The city gets nothing, no sales tax. So just keep that in mind. It's part of our job up here to make sure that revenue sources are protected. Like any one of you, you have income coming into your family, as do I. I know that when I was a single mom, my boys wanted me to work at Walmart so I could be home more. Well, they didn't realize that working at Walmart, I was going to have to take a significant cut in pay and work nights and weekends. So just because people want things, they don't always realize the adverse effects from it. So just, there's two sides to this. So just keep that in mind. So, as a single mom, I would have loved to have been home more, but I could not put our family's income in jeopardy. The city's no different. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just add for my comments, next Monday is Memorial Day, and I would just encourage everyone to take time, pause, consider all the sacrifices that have been made so that we can live where we are and have the freedoms that we have, and not to make Memorial Day just about a day off, but take some time to pause and consider the price that's been paid so that we can have these holidays and the life that we live. Also, the Help Center. I want to mention the Help Center. They recently had their 40th anniversary. Congratulate them on all the hard work they do for our community. 40 years of involvement, 40 years of helping people. So it's something that's kind of a homegrown thing, and it served this community well. Also, got an invitation to the Vietnam Veterans of America. That's chapter 1004. They invited me out for their 15th anniversary. Really amazing story for the number of how active they are in this community, how well they represent us. I believe they're, if not the most active, but one of the most active in terms of volunteer hours contributed in the country as far as the Vietnam Veterans of America. So appreciate them, appreciate everything that they do as well. Also EMS, it's been a 10-year journey to get to where we are now. We've got that other station open. The 3rd ambulance is now in rotation, and we're really starting to see some dividends that if you're watching this as a taxpayer, that this is what you're paid. That's what you've been paying for. We're starting to see that out there. We're offering a level of service that I don't believe you can get anywhere else in this county. And you as its taxpayers have invested into this, and you're now seeing the rewards for this. And I appreciate all of them, all their effort. You saw the ladies and gentlemen that were recognized before this meeting. We have a number of them that work very hard to keep the city, the citizenry safe and make Mount Juliet what it is. And I'll end on this. Congratulations to all the graduates who graduated. I know we had 4 high schools graduate over the weekend, and that's our 4 public high schools, and then probably numerous other schools that have graduated as well. I wish them the best on whatever endeavors they pursue in the future, whether it's college, the trades, or whatever they may have. Wish them the best. And as a parent of a graduate, parents, I know what you're feeling too. So with that, I thank them again, and I'll recognize our city manager for his comments.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Thanks for everybody that's in attendance tonight and those watching from home. I'll start by saying thanks for the folks that come out tonight to support us. Thanks to those that come to the mic and spoke. Mr. and Ms. Buchanan, I got to talk to them a little bit last week. I understand their concerns, and Matt will make sure. I said sometimes where the stakes are placed isn't necessarily where the road or the intrusion to go to, but we support you 100%. And we'll make sure there's as little impact as possible with that. So thank you for coming out. I want to thank the staff as well. Thank you, Commissioner, for those kind comments. It takes a lot when you're thinking about putting those things together. And we understand that this board, as always, since you think about the city's founding in 1835 or incorporation in 1972 and how long it's been around and how well it's operated, to be good stewards of the taxpayers' resources. And we follow your guidance on that. We follow your lead on that. And it's amazing what we can do. The little city that could, I guess you'd say, has always done well on mainly sales tax revenue. So we always talk about shopping local. Please support your local businesses. If you need something and you can wait till you get to Mount Juliet to get it, please do that, because when the commissioners speak to the budget tonight, that's what operates the city. And it's because this commission said, you know what, we don't want to be a burden on our residents. We don't want to put big property tax on our citizens. So, basically for 10 to 11 years now, we've had somewhat of a property tax, but you think about how long the city operate without one, or with one that's next to nothing. It's very low. So kudos to the commission, kudos to the citizens, because that's what it takes to form a good city. And I do truly believe that sometimes, unless you say it out loud, like I said at the last meeting, it's easy to forget it. It's sort of like a lot of other blessings that we have in our lives. If you don't take time to think about it and say it out loud and say it to other people, even something as simple as I love you, or I appreciate you, it can sometimes go unnoticed. So I appreciate you all. I appreciate the folks out in our community that make Mount Juliet what it is, and look forward to another really, really good year of, you think about the fire department. Somebody just yesterday, we were breaking ground or talking about it, and it's up. And there's a lot of projects tonight that the commission will be considering that'll start off on pieces of paper, or maybe just as a vision, and then we'll make sure that those happen as a team. So it takes all of us pulling together to make that happen. So thank you all, and that concludes my report, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, sir. And we will transition into the business portion of the agenda. We have our first item, which is found under unfinished business, which is item 10.1. This was deferred from our last meeting, is an ordinance to amend Part B of the Unified Development Code of the City of Mount Juliet, Tennessee, known as the zoning regulation ordinance 2001-29, adopted October 8, 2001, as amended by amending Article 3, Use Regulations, adding Section 3-108, Temporary Events, Uses, and Portable Buildings to include mobile food vendors, food trucks, regulations for residential and industrial districts. Have a motion and a second. The item is back on the table. We left off on discussion of the amendment, which was made by Commissioner Mullally. It was to amend said ordinance to only allow canteen trucks, one per day, to cover all shifts in industrial ice cream trucks from 11 a.m. to sunset, with no parking following B3A in residential amenity centers with public restrooms. Allow food trucks for a maximum of 2 community events per calendar year, with a maximum of 2 food trucks and 1 ice cream truck for a maximum of 4 hours per event. No canteen trucks. If the event is for 2 days, food and ice cream trucks can only be there for 1 day, and that was seconded by the vice mayor. So I'll open the floor up with that on the amendment. Commissioner Mullally.
Thank you. I have a legal question right off. How can an ordinance legally be changed when there's a pending motion on it?
I think I can connect some of the dots. Maybe we had a ordinance as was presented on the agenda last time. It was opened up, but we've got another red line copy. I think we would have to make an amendment to accept the red line copy, since the original copy we already started work on as the board.
And where's the current motion that was carried over from the last meeting?
Correct.
Then I would go ahead and act on that.
Okay. So in order to, if we chose to move ahead with this redlined, I call it Proposal B, it would need to be adopted by amendment. Is that correct? Okay. So then back onto the original ordinance on the motion.
All right.
I believe it's once amended already.
Yeah, I'd like to amend my motion to increase the number of canteen trucks in industrial to 2 per day instead of 1.
2 instead of 1. I'll second that. All right, any questions, or do you have any other comments on that? Then I'll leave it to the floor. Any questions or comments on the amendment? I see Commissioner Justice.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure, what are we trying to accomplish? And I'm just not understanding what the amendment does. I mean, if we've got 5, you're talking about in industrial locations, right? I'm sorry.
What I just motioned for?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's only in industrial, because part of my motion from the last one was to have 1 canteen truck in industrial to cover all shifts. So I want to amend that to increase that number to 2 canteen trucks in industrial per day.
Again, I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish, because, I mean, if we've got 5 separate, and I'm just using that number, just pulled it out of there, if we've got 5 separate locations that are industrial locations, and you got 2 that you're allowing in 1 day, that means that 3 different locations are not serviced or not getting the ability to be serviced by a canteen truck because of a city ordinance. And I just see that being restrictive, and I think it's kind of going in a direction I don't like government to go in. I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's just, I mean, if you got okay, let's use this. If you got a canteen truck and they're in Amazon's parking lot, okay, well, then you got another canteen truck and it's in Under Armour's parking lot. So now FedEx doesn't get one. I mean, I don't understand why we're restricting them, I guess is what I'm trying to.
Well, I had motion for one, but I wanted to increase that to two.
I think that was 2 per lot or 2
Yeah.
per development or
Yeah.
2 per
per
parcel.
development.
Maybe is the right way to say it. 2 per
Per
parcel,
location.
location.
Yeah.
So that's FedEx gets 2, Amazon gets 2.
So each one of them will have the ability to have 2.
Yeah,
in their
instead of
parking lot.
one.
Okay, all right. I thought you were meaning limiting them into 2 in
No.
the entire city. Okay, it makes better
No,
sense.
no.
Thank you.
Mm-mm.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's quite all right. That amendment is a mouthful. So we're on the advisement of 2. Vice Mayor.
All right, so since we're in discussion, I'm just kind of thinking outside the box here. For Amazon, great example. They got multiple shifts. So if we're saying 2 per day, that means they have to determine if they want to supply their staff lunch, let's just say for first shift, but then second and third shift that the restaurants are not usually open during those times. We may want to be able to help them as well. And I kind of see what you're trying to accomplish, but I also look at Commissioner Justice. I mean, again, government's getting in the way, but I mean, I remember being on those job sites or those big industrial areas back when I was a kid, or let's say a young man that couldn't have enough time to make it to the restaurant. I had to pack a lunch, but if I was able to support and be able to get some food that was fresh, it was definitely a better night for me. So I'm thinking second, third shift. So now we're looking at, for me, I would want to say, let's just say 2 per shift. I mean, that way we can at least accommodate.
Well,
I mean, I don't
Well,
know
they
if that's an
could-
option.
I mean,
Right
they
now-
could stay there for all 3 shifts.
right now we're on a
Yeah.
amendment to increase it from 1 to 2. So 2 is, to your point, less restrictive than 1. So I second it. So if we want to vote on 2, we can get back on the amendment. Commissioner Hefner.
We're making this extremely, and this is why we're going to need a full-time person because of all these changes to keep track of this. I'm not sure why. This is a perfect example of government overreach. In industrial, where are they eating out there tonight? Nowhere, because there's nothing built out there. So why do we care if there's 1, 2, 5, or 10? I mean, if they're not going to generate, if there's too many, they're not going to generate the revenue to stay there. So let's let the market dictate how many are there and how many are not there. Why do we have to restrict it? Especially in industrial, you got three typically, 3 shifts out there. How many employees are we talking about at Amazon? 2,000? And you're going to service potentially 2,000 people with 2 food trucks that are going to have to sit there for 24 hours? That doesn't even make logical sense to me. So why are we creating all these restrictions in an area that has nowhere for those folks to go eat? I don't get it. And as far as the revenue, on average, maybe it's different out in the industrial area, but in residential, food trucks are averaging about $1,500 to $2,000 per day. If you look at our effective tax rate, and yes, even though it's not sales tax that we're collecting, the licensing fee is $100 that I'm proposing in the recent red line, which will more than cover the sales tax revenue that we would not receive because they will be licensed. My guess is out of Wilson County. So our effective tax rate that the city collects is 1.15%. Gino, is that correct? A little over 1%. So if they're generating $2,000 in gross sales, that's $20. $20 in sales tax revenue to the city. Yes, it's not sales tax per se, but it's no different than saying that a renter at an apartment doesn't pay property taxes. Do you think renters pay property taxes in an apartment? It's figured in with the rent. So with this $100 more than cover the sales tax revenue and help offset the administrative costs. And by the way, as far as this full-time employee, there isn't a better example of using taxpayer money to fund something that the citizens are going to directly benefit from and are asking for. So yeah, it's an extra expense, but that extra expense is going to be realized directly by the citizens. So let's put the citizens' taxpayer money to use to benefit them. So that's my comments on the amendment to the amendment.
Yes, you do. Are any more questions or comments on the motion to amend?
I'm trying to find where directly this is located, where it's, what you're trying to change. I mean, what part of the ordinance itself? This is one of the planning ordinance, one of them things that Jennifer only understands. Nobody else understands that but her. So. Well, okay. So the amendment that you were talking about was never voted on.
Correct.
So,
We deferred in the process of consideration of that amendment.
okay. So what she's talking about now, though, is it addressed anywhere in the original?
Yeah, I can,
So it's not anywhere in the ordinance then?
no, it's the motion to amend what we have before us.
So my question would be then, if we don't pass this, then as many canteen trucks as wanted to could show up in the parking lots, and as long as they paid their permits, right?
Well, right now, the one on the floor is the motion to amend from 1 canteen truck to 2.
Correct. But if
So
it
if we-
doesn't pass,
If that one doesn't pass, we'll be back onto the original motion unamended, and then we will vote on that motion. If that motion passes, it will change the original ordinance. If that motion fails, we will go back to what's being presented originally to us. So we have 2 votes before us on the amendments. So if we're ready to vote on those, we can get back to,
yeah, okay. I'm not going to be able to support you on this one, on this part of it.
are we ready to vote? Any other questions? All in favor of changing the amendment from 1 canteen truck to 2 in industrial signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that carries with 3 to 2 votes. So now the motion, we're back on the motion, which is a motion to amend the ordinance to only allow canteen trucks it's now been amended to 2 per day to cover all shifts in industrial ice cream trucks from 11 a.m. to sunset with no parking, follow B3A in residential amenity centers with public restrooms to allow food trucks for a maximum of 2 community events per year with a max of 2 food trucks and 1 ice cream truck for a max of 4 hours per event, no canteen trucks. If the event is for 2 days, event for 2 days, 2 food and ice cream trucks can only be there for 1 day. That's what we're on is the amended ordinance. So do we have any questions or comments on this one, or are we ready to vote on the amendment? Is that a yes, we're ready to vote, or
No,
yes?
it's a yes. I've got a
Okay, Commissioner Justice. your
government
comment.
is horrible.
Okay,
And this is a prime example of just how horrible it is. I mean, we're going through here. We're doing what lawyers do. God forbid.
well, we
Sitting at this
do
table
handle the
tonight,
law.
and I'm as a retired law enforcement officer, I've never been a big fan of attorneys except for Gino. I like him. I'm sitting here listening to this, and this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. So I just wanted out there. I don't like government. Just letting you know, I'm not a fan, and this is why. Let's continue on, I guess.
Well, I like productive meetings, so let's keep going.
Well, this one hasn't been, so I'm not so far.
Well, okay, so we're back on the ordinance. It's been amended once. This is the second amendment that has been amended. This is what we're discussing. We can vote this up, down, or talk about it and go back to the ordinance that's once amended. Are you asking to speak? Yes. Commissioner Hefner.
So we're on the amendment.
We're
the
back
original-
on the original amendment
original
as
amendment.
amended.
Okay, as amended. So again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but in this amendment, that was once amended, it restricts residential to one food truck. There's some some more restrictions, or it limits it to twice a year. Again, I don't understand all the restrictions. I don't understand. This is private property. The homeowner has to give permission. The HOA, if it's owned by private property, has to give permission. I have an alternative from the original amendment that I would like this board to consider, but I understand we are faced with a vote on this highly restrictive amendment. I don't like it. It's too restrictive. I don't understand the point of it.
Please don't.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do.
Listen, I'm grateful that I have it in writing, and if just as a way to move the meetings along in the future, if you have an amendment or a motion that you know in advance, it's going to be, we'll say, a paragraph or several sentences. Having it in writing is very appreciated. I'm glad it's in the minutes. I would have never gotten it right otherwise. Did you need to speak, Commissioner Milady? Commissioner Milady.
Okay, thank you. This is a fair compromise. My motion is a fair compromise because what you have in residential right now is nothing. You have no food truck options, no ice cream truck options, nothing. You have nothing. This is allowing 2 events a year. You can pick your 2 most important, biggest turnout per year. Pick it. Have a big shindig, invite the trucks. You get 2, you get 1 ice cream truck, as long as there's a parking lot with bathrooms and in an HOA. And yes, there's nothing for non-HOA which I live in, because there's nowhere for them to park. You cannot park in a individual residence, and you cannot park in the street. You cannot park in an empty lot. That's the ordinance that's on the table. So this is a very fair compromise. So can you put the map up on the screen, please? That is all the residential housing, single homes, including townhomes, apartments, and condos. And you see they're everywhere. So what the ordinance is on the table is wide open. It's wide open. Very few limitations. That's what the ordinance promotes. Wide open to the city. So yes, you did. So, can you just picture this? Food trucks everywhere. It's 7 days a week. Not my motion, but if this goes through, it's 7 days a week, all day long, pretty much. Ice cream trucks, 11 to sunset, which I support. Industrial, unlimited, the entire day. And residential, you get 2 food trucks, and I'm not sure, I'm confused. It's just wide open all day long and all night. I think it was 3 to 9, I think it was, which is way too open. Anyway, so I put a motion on the table as a fair compromise. So what is presented in his motion is just far too liberal. And still nothing is mentioned about where the trucks come from. Are they Mount Juliet businesses? Are they in the county? Are they out of county? Still nothing is mentioned about that. And as I said earlier, if it's for example, Roasted Coconut, she lives in my neighborhood. She's a Mount Juliet food truck. We would get some sales tax from that. in addition to the fees. But if it's someone outside of the city, in the county, we get nothing. And the way it is right now, what's on the table is $300 a day or $1,200 for 6 months, which I agree that I think that's pretty steep. But no sales tax. The city survives on sales tax. Like it or not, we just survive on sales tax. Our brick and mortars invest a lot of money to open businesses here. It's not cheap to open a business here. It's not. So to me, what's being proposed is just, it's going to be detrimental to our sales tax. And that's what I was talking about earlier about our revenue. It's our revenue source. There are plenty of brick and mortar business owners who oppose this, because I held a town hall with them last year, and there were plenty of them that are opposed to this. And still again, let's see. I just think my motion is fair. It's a fair compromise. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting something. Now, you think this is an open door? If what he's going to propose next, where the red letters are included, if what he's going to propose next is far worse, it's what he's going to end up doing is every single residential neighborhood roll in brick and mortars on wheels into every single family neighborhood, apartment complex, townhome complex, condo complex. He's going to just roll them in, unlimited, very few limits in every single one of them. We cannot do this. And I just think it's absurd for a sitting board member to jeopardize the city's revenue source like this. It's just totally absurd, in my opinion.
Right.
So anyway, we have a motion on the table. It's my motion, and I do think it's a fair compromise.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments on this? If there's no objection, I will skip reading the amendment. Hearing no objection, all in favor of the amendment as once amended, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. Commissioner, that fails, but we're back on the ordinance as once amended from the last meeting. And I might not have said it exactly the way you said it, Commissioner Mullally, on the red line edition. I have numerous concerns on it. With what we have on here, it's not on there yet, the $100 per day, but there is a fee set on the original one that's set there. My only concern with that, it collects the city, it would probably make up for the lost sales tax on that. We might want to put some consideration, if this goes forward on second reading, is trying to capture some of that revenue that would be lost by the school system on it. But I've got a suggestion here tonight, and I'm going to throw it out here. We've got an amended version on here. It does scare me a little bit. I think there's some wisdom in maybe crawling before you run, and I feel like the amended version that may get presented here tonight is an example of running before you crawl. And I'll preface this by saying this too. I've read numerous cities, food truck ordinances, the way those are governed. And there's a reason why this hasn't just flown back up here within a year's time. It's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts to it. It's not so much about trying to protect one business over the others, but there's an interesting read out there. If anybody's so inclined to read, is about cities that rely primarily on sales tax and how that can be a separating decision-making mechanism that separates the elected officials from the constituents out there, because you wind up with a board that caters so closely to sales tax needs, and those don't always align. And that's not my plug for a higher property tax, but it's something that I know I have to be conscious of as I go into decision making on this. My suggestion would be work on what we've got on the table before us on here. Start off something small on this thing. I don't know what the right answers are. I do know this, and as Mr. Justice alluded to, sometimes government's nasty and doesn't always get the right thing up here. I can't promise you I can pass anything if you let me draw it out that's going to fit everybody's needs. It's going to keep everybody happy. That's going to combine all these things. I would suggest we start this, and, you know, I think there's an example by the state of Tennessee. They put a sunshine clause on things. They pass it, and if it's got a date that's set on that thing, it just goes away if no other action is taken. I would suggest that we as a Board of Commissioners pass something maybe for a 6-month sunshine clause on this. If this is a total disaster, let's walk away from it. If in 6 months from now, if our citizens out here are happy with it, there's no adverse effects. We talked to our finance director. She says we're not in danger of bankrupting our city. Wilson County Schools doesn't have to start laying off teachers. We're not seeing the neighborhoods overrun with crime. The amenity centers aren't infested with rodents or whatever the worst case scenarios that I've heard. If that's not happening, let's bring it back in 6 months and see if we want to expand it, tweak it, and get it right. I'm perfectly fine, guys, up here admitting that I don't have all the answers on this. This is uncharted territory, and that's my suggestion, because I would like to try to move something ahead that we can agree on and work on. And I'm here to acknowledge right now on first reading, before we move any further, say we're not going to get it perfect. Commissioner Justice.
My question, do you have an amendment to that effect?
I could come up with one really quick.
Well, when you come up with it, I'm going to second it. The only thing that I would ask is that through this process, if we see something that might be changed prior to that 6-month period, we can address it prior to the 6-month period. I don't want to be limited to, because we can't do anything for 6 months.
Well, if we're talking about a sunshine clause, it would just be a clause that goes in here, and I can do it right now.
Do it.
I would make an motion to amend that this ordinance would sunset on December 1st, 2023.
Second.
Got a second on that. Any questions or comments on that? All right. All in favor of sunsetting the ordinance, if passed, on December 1st, 2023, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're back on the ordinance as twice amended. A suggestion for a starting point might be the fees, and I can defer to someone who better speak to that than myself. Commissioner Hefner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, not sure which version you're looking at. I can do these one by one, because there are several changes I'd like to propose. They're redlined in your copy. We could start with the fees. $300 a day, $1,200 a month, $2,000. That was feedback that I received was pretty high. I'm on packet page 45. Item number, the new number 5. So what I would like to adjust those to just to a $100 per day license fee, and do away with the month and the year. So it's just a 100 per day. Do you want me to do these by way of an amendment, or?
Please, and I think it's probably easier if we just do them one at a time.
Right. Yep. So I I'd like to amend established fees, $100 per day, and do away with the 300, 1,200 a month, 2,000 a year. That's a motion.
Okay, we have a motion that's been properly second. I believe that would change it to read established fees $100 per day. And
Correct.
The rest would be stricken.
Correct.
Could be either one. Struck. All right. Commissioner Malady?
Question, is this for any of them, whether they're in Mount Juliet, in the county, or out of county?
As it's written here, yes, it would be the same. And I think that would apply to everything except for what the parks is coordinating. Am I correct? Wrong? Commissioner Hefner?
Yeah, so for current commercial food truck ordinance, we don't charge for Mount Juliet businesses that are licensed in Mount Juliet. The same would hold true for residential and industrial. So these fees would apply to non-Mount Juliet licensed food truck businesses. So if you have a business outside of Mount Juliet, you pay the $100. If you have a business license in Mount Juliet and you have a food truck, you do not have to pay the $100. You still have to pay an application fee, but not the $100. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is there you have to get a license. Sorry. You still have
Let's
to get
hear
the
from
license.
our planning
Yeah.
director.
You're correct. You still have to get, apply for that permit. There would be no fee.
Fees are waived for Mount Juliet.
For instance, Emil Rose, she has a food truck. She has a City of Mount Juliet business license. She would not be subject to the $100 fee.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this? All in favor of changing it to read established fees of $100 per day? Yeah, got Commissioner Justice got a
Real
question?
quick, what do other communities do in relation to this?
Can I address this?
Yes, sir.
This food truck ordinance, the baseline for this food truck ordinance is actually Brentwood's.
Okay, so that's Brentwood.
I know we made some changes to it, but
I spent 20 years trying to do everything in my power not to let us be like Brentwood. So I don't
I
want.
know. We looked at a few of them. That this was the one that was closest to where I was wanting to get to. So
Okay.
Not all aspects of Brentwood are bad.
Okay, I'm gonna take your word for it.
They, yeah, different financing model for sure, but
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the amendment? All right, all in favor of setting the established fees to $100 per day, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This carries 4-1, so we're back on the ordinance as twice amended. Commissioner Hefner?
So still on packet page 45, item 6. I would like to add after per year, include the language is limited to 12 neighborhood community events allowed for 2 consecutive days. With the sunset.
Yeah.
Would we keep the 12? I'm open to
Well, I think
keeping the 12 or reducing it by half.
to make sure I'm on the right page, it currently reads no restrictions on the number of permits per year per vendor, correct?
Correct. Sorry. So strike no.
And then we would strike no, change it to restrictions on the number of permits issued per vendor per year is limited to 12 neighborhood community events, allowed 2 consecutive days.
Correct.
Okay.
So again, keeping it limited to 12 per community, per residential, basically.
What is the purpose of that?
Well, trying to keep the floodgates from trying to keep from the floodgates from opening up. But since we have a sunset, I'm okay retracting that amendment.
Is it a crawl before we run?
That's my attempt, but now that we have a sunset, we may not need to restrict it by any, because it's a 6-month trial period. So I'm
I'll-
fine retracting my
Well, I was going
amendment
to
on it.
second it. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Justice.
Okay, in my district, I have a couple of really nice restaurants. You know, one of those being the Barrel House, the other one being the Paper Mill. I think you talked about them a few minutes ago. Those people don't have a problem with a food truck. Now, I will tell you this. If there is a food truck out there that the food is so good that it's threatening to put any business out of business, I really want it here because I want to eat there. That's bound to be a good food truck. I mean, I've got a problem with anybody whose business model is threatened by a food truck. For God's sakes, tamales and tacos, I mean, there should not be a problem. So, I mean, if you want to pull this back, I'm going to have to vote against it if you don't. I just don't think it's necessary. The market's going to dictate what these people are going to do.
I'm fine pulling it back. We get a 6-month trial period.
Sure.
Basically, we can reevaluate it at the end of 6 months if we need to reset and restrict it after 6 months, and we can entertain that in 6 months. So
I asked the planning, do you happen to know exactly how many neighborhoods are impacted on this so we can just throw the math together real quick?
Commissioner Mullally subdivision map that she showed, it has 85 subdivisions, established subdivisions within the city of Mount Juliet.
85 with amenity centers?
No, that's just 85 Cedar Creek Village.
Because unless we
Clearview.
amend this is still
Well, no.
limited to amenity centers.
correct.
Whatever it's called on your road.
But that's not the city.
Well, whatever it's called on your road. Cedar Creek Drive, or I'm not sure.
Okay, I mean, I've got numerous that are older in my district. I've got the oldest literally district in the city, so we don't have amenity centers.
I addressed, yeah.
So what's that? We're going to get amenity centers?
Yes.
I'm excited.
Okay. So do you know the count with amenity centers that we're talking about?
I don't. I wish I had that broken down.
Yeah.
I just counted the 85 previously, just to try to get an idea of how many permits we could potentially be issuing at 12 a year when Commissioner Hefner made that suggestion to me.
So
last week.
X is less than 85. Maybe we can work that out on second reading if we get there. Commissioner Hefner?
I mean, and then I'll address the non-HOAs next, because I think it'll make sense when we get to that non-HOA neighborhoods. May make sense to limit to 12. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 12, to limit to 12. Can always be changed.
Yeah.
Right now, they don't have any. So
Yeah, questions or comments on this amendment?
come on.
All right, the amendment is to restrict the number of permits issued per year restrict the number of permits issued per vendor per year is limited to 12 neighborhood community events allowed 2 consecutive days. All in favor signify by saying aye on the restriction. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. That passes 3-2. So now we're with a third amendment. Commissioner Hefner?
Sorry. That vote just blew my mind. Okay, never mind. We're trying to restrict it from unlimited. I was restricting it to 12.
Well,
Anyways,
it carried.
okay. Okay. Let me get to the. Okay, help me out, Ms. Hamlin. Packet page 48. Is that what we talk about, the non HOAs? Okay. So packet page 48, motion to amend to add this following paragraph. Neighborhood community event means a non-commercial event located within a residential subdivision which may be open to the public and which is approved by the planning director, city administrator by permit. Community events are to be held on private property within residential developments. A neighborhood community event must be determined by the planning director, city administrator, to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored by the HOA or a group of homeowners or other organization and not one individual. So what this is stating is it could be a homeowner in a residential community, and I'll get to the location here in a minute, but this opens it up to non-HOA neighborhoods because it's adding that group of homeowners or other organizations, not one individual. So yeah, the idea it's on private property. It will be in a, which you'll see the language coming up here in a minute, could be on an open space, undeveloped lot, private property, or it can be food trucks can be parked in a driveway on a non-connector road, which I've got that. No, I've got a. Well, I don't want food trucks parked in a driveway where that driveway is on a connector road, because people are going to be walking on a connector road, which is highly traveled, to walk. Again, my public safety is what I'm trying to address here. So to get it in a non-HOA residential, you're basically looking at a driveway or a lot. And I don't want people walking on a connector road to get to a food truck. I'd much rather that be on a side road on private property. But
Commissioner Justice?
Can I get a definition of a connector road?
I think there's one probably in our ordinance, but I would classify Clearview Drive as a connector road.
Talking about connecting two open
A
streets.
major thoroughfare within a subdivision. I'm not sure this main road name in Jackson Hills, but similar.
Like Vanner, one
Vanner.
of those roads.
Well, before we get too far into this, is there a second?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get something out of this.
Okay, that's a second. Okay. So the question is the definition of the roads that are going to be taken in. The question is the definition of a collector road, I believe, from Commissioner Justice.
Right, and if I may, the connector road that I was talking about and what I was trying to get to was, I mean, for instance, if it's in a cul-de-sac, it can be in any driveway within that subdivision.
A cul-de-sac is a government-funded driveway.
Okay. Yeah. I want you to understand what I'm trying to get to is here. I'm trying to stop restricting the food trucks and allow the food trucks to come into Mount Juliet. And if we restrict them and or we put such a high price on them, I don't care what we allow, they're not going to come anyway. So, I mean, we need to be careful with that. So, carry on. Let's keep going down the list.
Any other questions or comments on this? Commissioner Mullally.
Okay, so I assume Belinda Parkway is a connector road. All right, so if you live on Belinda Parkway, you can't participate in this. Only if you live on a side street. In the last meeting, private property was described as private HOA with a parking lot. That's private property. But now we're opening another door to allow food trucks, and look at that map again, in everybody's driveway. All empty lots next door. What if you live here, there's an empty lot here, and your neighbor lives over there. Neighbor's going to park a food truck in their driveway and also the empty lot with the owner's permission. Well, what if you're the other neighbor and you oppose that? I mean, what if? So, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And I don't know that people know the difference on what a connector road is. I don't know that anybody that lives on Belinda Parkway knows what a connector road is. So who's going to tell them they can't have a food truck because they live on a particular street?
And I think that's probably gets to the need of a extra planning technician. And that's some of my concerns on this portion of it was opening this up. I look at Hickory Hills, just assuming that's just a neighborhood. I just did the math on it. 12 events, 650 houses, 7,800 events a year. Assuming a lot of those are on connector roads, so you cut it in half. Worst case scenario, only 3,900 events a year. So that's not too bad, right? That's probably, these numbers are obviously far-fetched, for example, but whether you have a few or not, I do have some concern about having a food truck set up on somebody's private property. I think kind of the unspoken maybe covenant or agreement that we made with people when we zoned residential neighborhoods was you wouldn't have commercial activities going on in your neighbor's yard or driveway or whatever. I understand people will want it, but then again, you got the person right beside them that may not want that happening beside their house or across the street or diagonal or whatever on that. That is what I worry about. I'm ready to start, but this one's just a tad too far for me on this one. I'd really be curious to hear, and I know I'll hear from people that want food trucks. I don't have a doubt about that, but there's people out there that bought their houses on cul-de-sacs for peace and quiet. There's potentially you could have multiple events a year going on out there. And to put it in perspective, we don't allow this for any other type of commercial activity. So that's kind of my rub on it. Any other comments or questions on the amendment? Vice Mayor.
I just had a question, just because I did have to step away for a brief second. So for example, if I want to have an ice cream truck, let's say a birthday party, I want to have an ice cream truck for all of the kids that are at the birthday event. This will allow me to have at least one per month, correct?
Sandwin can correct me if I'm wrong. You can have that. You can have a food truck right now.
No, not a food truck, an ice cream truck.
Well, as a catered event, you can have a food truck.
Okay.
So everything that we're talking about right now, as far as it's going to irritate the neighbors, they can do it today. It can be done today. So have we seen a big issue with people getting food trucks parked in their driveway? So again, I think a lot of this is just rhetoric, but
I do see this as being a benefit. I mean, obviously, like a food truck that's planning on spending $100 for a permit to come out, their goal is to make a profit. Well, I mean, again, if your neighbors don't like the food truck, they're not going to come over and buy the tacos or buy whatever.
Right.
So again, the food truck's not going to show up unless they're going to plan on making some type of revenue. And then it has to be supported by the community typically, because again, if it goes back to the community, that's where they're going to make their revenue. But if not, I don't see one resident going to go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to give you $1,500 because that's what we hope that you're going to make. And I'm going to pay $100, or, you're going to pay $100. It just doesn't make sense. It's not good business. So
yeah, a lot of them actually require $300 minimum now anyways to even show up.
Yep.
That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah, that's the same thing
So-
here too. There's a minimum.
Yeah, there's
I
the food
actually
truck.
heard a
Yeah.
lot more too. So
Yeah. So I don't think it's, anyways.
Well, I'll just say I'd like to see them at the amenity centers where there's parking already there and there's restrooms. But any other questions or comments? Mr. Justice.
I'm still trying to figure out why we're getting so regulatory. We're getting to sound like the federal government.
Well, we're actually deregulating
well, that's
commercial
what I'm trying to go
activities in
to.
residential zone neighborhoods.
I mean, my subdivision was built in 1962. We would consider a food truck an amenity at this point. Tickled to death to have it. again, I want to make sure that we don't go restricting things. I see somebody from a government agency coming in and jumping on little girls with lemonade stands on the road. I know it's a stretch, Mayor, but I think you get where I've seen more odd things than that. So we'll just keep saying, be careful.
Well,
I don't think the people in my subdivision could care less whether they have a food truck or not, honestly.
Well, I'll say we say deregulating, but I say deregulating because we're opening up the residential zoning to commercial activities. So we're reducing the restrictions. Our city attorney seems to have some wisdom to offer.
I don't know if they're words of wisdom, they're words. The only time you get to operate in a residential is if there's a neighborhood community event.
Correct.
So it's not just Gino calling the food truck to park in his driveway. And the neighborhood event is subject to the planning director, city administrator when they apply for their permit. And it is to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored by the HOA or a group of homeowners or other organizations, not one individual. So
Correct.
it's not just one person calling up to bring it in. It's a community event as defined there. So anyway.
So not every individual within that subdivision has an opportunity to get a food truck in their driveway.
They do not.
Correct. Okay.
Commissioner Mullally?
So in a non-HOA, if you've got 15 neighbors that want to have a community event, then yeah, it opens the door.
It's got to be a community event. If it's 15 neighbors, then I'm assuming those 15 neighbors are agreeable to have that there is a block party or something along those lines, but it's not just somebody.
That's what I mean. It could be
bringing-
their own made-up community event.
Correct. Just the same as almost a caterer, if you could. They could do the same thing without this by saying, we're going to have a party and we're going to have a food truck cater us. And they bring a food truck in instead of having it all set up in the backyard with tables and whatnot. They have a food truck and that's the catering event. So those 15 families can bring a food truck in right now under our current as a catered event.
Yeah, but if I'm a food truck operator, I'm gonna figure out a way to come up with a revenue sharing model for about 15 families on the cul-de-sac and bounce that puppy around 12 times, 2 days each on that thing, and we're all going to eat high on the hog. Yeah, questions or comments? Maybe I just gave away a business model. Maybe I should keep my mouth shut.
Consulting fee.
Yeah. All right, all in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. This one fails, Commissioner. Commissioner Hefner, would you like the floor?
I'm looking, I'm going. Okay, we don't have to read that one. Industrial. We wanted to tighten up the language on industrial. So back on packet page 45. So we got there's several industrial zoned areas in Mount Juliet. So we want to, again, limit this to, again, the purpose of this was really, for me, was Golden Bear, Under Armour, Amazon. So number 3 this was a new ad. Industrial zoning is limited to sites utilized for activity type, warehousing, goods, transport, and storage. That's a motion.
Is there a second? Okay, there's a second on that. I guess my question is, by limiting it to warehousing goods, transportation, and storage, if I got it right, the amendment that was second was industrial zoning is limited to sites utilized for activity type, warehousing, good, transportation, and storage. What are we eliminating by restricting it to that? That's
You have entertainment district, which would include like maybe the taekwondo place. That's the one negative I could see after we spoke. Self-storage facilities. I believe the reason that Commissioner Hefner brought this to the table was because of the potential self-storage facilities we're going to be seeing on Lebanon Road pretty soon. Car repair, auto body, your HVAC companies. It was primarily though to capture the actual warehousing that we're seeing on Golden Bear.
So to keep, I guess if I'm reading into this, is to keep that ability to serve those without going too
Opening,
far.
yeah, correct.
But it's properly motioned and second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right, all in favor of industrial zoning is limited to size utilized for activity types, warehousing, goods, transportation, and storage, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that carries. We're on the
I
amendment
think I
as
only have one more.
4 times amended.
I think I only have one more.
Commissioner Hefner?
Yeah, now this is located throughout. This is, I thought this was captured in the original, but since it's red lined, so packet page 45 under the summary, so this can carry through where the changes need to be made. After amenity center, add, strike that. Amenity center, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. So there was a concern by a member of the Planning Commission, Gerard Bullock, about the concern of competing with the lunch, Uber Eats lunch crowd. So he suggested to start that at 3 p.m. during the weekdays. So it's not competing with that Uber Eats lunch crowd. I was amenable to that. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday would be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So that's my motion.
So you struck the portion about at the amenity center. So just read up to 2 food trucks or canteen trucks permitted in residential areas, open space or private. Well, I guess we need to strike private property.
Correct.
So up to 2 food trucks or canteen trucks permitted in residential areas, open space, residential open space, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday and Sunday.
Correct.
Okay. Was there a second on that?
I'll second on that for discussion.
Okay. It's motion's been made and seconded. You want the floor, Vice Mayor?
Yes, please. So I go back to the same thing, if we're worried about Uber Eats, it's another business. So I don't see a problem if it affects lunch or not. I mean, it's the market. No, personally, I mean, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Sunday. That's where I feel about it. I mean, again, if we have a warehouse or a company that wants to go out there and provide a food truck, then that's kind of, oh, I'm sorry, residential then, my apologies. Okay. So if we go back to the residential side, you actually crossed out the line for the restrooms, facilities and so forth. Isn't that part of public health for, to be able to provide some type of sanitize area? I know.
Yeah, I'll
Just
address
asking.
that. It's in a residential neighborhood. I'm assuming they probably have a neighbor they can go,
Yeah.
or they can go home and go to the restroom.
Yeah.
I didn't see the need to add the restrictions of the bathrooms because it's in a residential neighborhood. It's not like I could see actually more of a need in the industrial, but they go back to work, go to the bathroom. So
I just look at like, let's say 4th of July falls on a Tuesday,
Mhm.
you know, and the community wants to have maybe a food truck during lunchtime, like a whole day event or something. Is that still going to be effective?
Yeah.
on
So,
this?
so
How's that work?
how that would work is there is language in here the city manager can
Okay. Provide a waiver or something.
provide a waiver.
Okay. Never mind. Okay. That's great then.
I'll just add, this is a proposal to strike public restrooms.
What page are you on?
I'm on packet page 50, I believe is what you're referencing.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in the actual agenda on page 45 still. It's actually on the first line, section 1 under, the summary.
Oh, you're on packet 50.
Yeah, correct. But it's actually in the agenda also, page 45. If you look at the first line, up to 2 food trucks, and then it says 3 p.m.
Yes, and I did not read that strike through on that amendment.
So I'm confused. Bathrooms or no bathrooms?
Well, I'll read what
He didn't read that. I was asking about
Yeah.
it. That's what I
No.
was asking.
You're right.
Yeah, I said that this is what was the motion and was seconded. Up to 2 food trucks or canteen trucks permitted in residential areas, open space, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Well, that spelling of Monday needs to be corrected. Monday through Friday and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday and Sunday.
Correct.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the bathroom yet.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? We ready to vote? All right, all in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Justice, is you nay? You were yes, nay, or yes vote? Okay. Okay, so it carries 4-1 on this. So we're on that would be our 5th amendment.
It's humorous.
Would you like the floor, sir?
I think we covered Ms. Hamblin. Did we cover it? Most of the other stuff was specific to non-residential.
Yeah. Then if you're finished, I'm going to ask our planning director if she has anything she wants to add or recommendations on this before we vote.
I just want to make sure, I know it's not a motion, but there are some wording in here provided by our city attorney, Charles Michaels, and that's in green in your versions. So I just want to, can I have like 2 seconds to read this?
Would if there's no objection, I would recommend maybe just taking a 5-minute recess, giving our planning director some time to review this before we vote. And that'll give everybody just a minute to catch up, and then we can reconvene at 8:15. Is there any objection to that? And we're going to recess for 5 minutes and let our planning director review this. Good evening. I'll call this meeting back to order. Um, We were anticipating a report from our planning director. That's you,
Is that me?
Director Hamlin.
Actually went over a few changes that Commissioner Hefner needs to make in a motion. And I'll, if you don't mind, just let him go over those. We caught two small things.
Commissioner Hefner.
So, thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to read, we actually voted this down. But there are certain components to what was voted down that need to be considered and voted on. But I am modifying it to remove homeowners and organizations and not one individual, so non-HOAs. But I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we add this language back in, and this will become clear once I read it. The idea behind this is the HOAs, now it's only HOAs, have to obtain a neighborhood community event permit in order to issue the city to issue food truck licenses for neighborhoods. So the HOA has to obtain an event permit, which gives us information of the HOA, contact information, the location, the dates. So that's, I want to read this back in because I think that's important that we have that. But I will remove the part that talks about the non-HOA property since that's didn't go over too well. So anyways, packet page 48. So motion to add the following. This is a definition. Neighborhood community event means a non-commercial event located within a residential subdivision which may be open to the public and which is approved by the planning director, city administrator by permit. Community events are to be held on private property within residential developments. A neighborhood community event must be determined by the planning director, city administrator to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored by an HOA. Period. Hold on.
We'll have a second on this. Director Hamlin.
I just caught this, Commissioner Hefner, and I'm really sorry. Instead of private property, would you like that to read amenity center or open space?
Steve, I'd scribbled down the community events to be held on private property owned by an HOA.
That's fine.
I was going to read it back that way.
I'm good with that.
All right, and you second? Yes. Okay. So we have it on there. It's neighborhood community events means a non-commercial event located within a residential subdivision, which may be open to the public and which. My mic is not on. Should recognize myself before I start talking. Bad mayor. Neighborhood community event means a non-commercial event located within a residential subdivision, which may be open to the public and which is approved by the planning director, city administrator by permit. Community events are to be held on private property owned by an HOA. A neighborhood community event must be determined by the planning director, city administrator to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored by the HOA. Questions, comments? Commissioner Justice?
Once again, you're restricting non-HOAs. Commissioner Mullally brought up the fact that over on Belinda City Parkway, being a connector road, that you couldn't do anything over there. There's no HOAs on the side streets that involve the side. I don't think, are there? In Belinda City? Are there? I mean, there's no HOA on the side streets, Sunny Acres or any of those, right?
No.
So none of that can have food trucks. None. I've got 2 subdivisions just on Oliver Road alone that don't have HOAs. I'm sitting there counting out 1, 2, 3. Denny Hills I can name you 7 different locations, 7 different developments over there that are close-knit developments, would love to have a community event, but we're saying, no, you can't have food trucks in your community event. But if you got an HOA, you're okay. I don't think it's quite fair. I don't know why we're restricting these folks. And I don't, I'm not going to be voting for anything that restricts non-OHOA. We got a bunch of those in this city. We're getting to be an older city, and a lot of the original developments. I mean, if you've got an answer for me, let me know.
Commissioner Hefner.
I do, and it's allowed today. They just have to. It's under a catering event. So if you got a non-HOA that wants to have food trucks, they could bring a food truck in under a catering classification and have them today. The main difference is you're prepaying for the food as opposed to being able to walk up and order it.
Commissioner Milady?
And for clarification, a private catering event that we can already have is not open to the public. If you have a birthday party or whatever, for your kid, you can invite the neighborhood kids over to the party, but no money is exchanged on that food truck. It's a for your private party. So your neighbors can't just come over and participate in that food truck. It's a private event. So just for clarification, and another clarification too, on the connector road, they're collector roads actually. So Matt just informed me they're called collector roads.
Commissioner Justice.
Okay. And I understand what you're saying when you say collector roads, like the difference between a major collector versus residential collector, things of that nature. That's where I was getting confused. I understand now. The connector road that she's talking about, though, is connection from one road to another road. So there is that definition for it. So I understand what Commissioner Hefner is also saying. What restrictions does a non-HOA have at this point? Are you saying they're allowed under a catering? Is that what you're saying? So what's the difference between this and an HOA and a non-HOA?
On catering, there is no differences that I'm aware of. And she's director's in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's the difference is with the catering is it's paid for and purchased. It's a one-time purchase. It's being delivered to the location. What we're talking about is someone coming into a neighborhood and doing commerce in the neighborhood, which would be the engaging in selling. So that's primarily the differences between the two.
Again, I understand. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with the restrictions placed on a non-HOA versus an HOA. With the oldest district, with the oldest residential in the city being in my district, there's not a lot of HOAs. So my district specifically is probably hit harder by this than anybody. That's not saying we want to go out and bring in 37 food trucks into a subdivision, but we want the ability. Can we fix that before I can vote on this?
Well, right now we're on this amendment, but
Well, I mean, if we can fix it during the course of this amendment,
we've already voted that down once.
I know, and I want it back.
Well, you have the floor. Do you have anything to add or say?
Sure, add where it says HOAs and non-HOAs. Very simple.
Okay.
Let us figure out where we're going to put them that doesn't restrict, when we want to bring it in. If I want somebody in my subdivision with food trucks, then let me bring them in. We put them in open space or on private residential property. for the purpose of the event. That was my motion, yes. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a motion and a second on this. I'll just go back to my original objection to this is we traditionally not allowed commerce, or we have not allowed commerce to engage in residential zonings. And I'm comfortable doing it in an amenity center, but I'm not comfortable with turning people's driveways into a point of commerce. But Vice Mayor.
I just got a quick question. So, and all of this is Mr. Martin question or Gino, but is there any opportunity to do a variance kind of if we're allowing the city manager to give a variance on some of these other ordinances? Is it possible to go ahead and keep the amendment where it is right now with HOAs, and then you be able to, you or else, let's just say the commissioner or someone in that, department, again, I hope that you don't get flooded with thousands of calls where we got to hire another person just to manage this. But at the same time, if we can give a variance, this way we can move forward tonight. And at least, for the next until December, we can feel it out, see what kind of traction we get. I think it was a great idea what the mayor decided to do at the beginning of this, to do a trial run for 6 months. Let's see what kind of traction we get here for the next variance. So that way, if we have a supporting commissioner that's wanting to support his district, city manager, them two give the variance and we can be able to go that. Is that an opportunity in the next 6 months we can do this? Or Mr. Marchetti? Any questions there or any concerns?
If you want to open it up to neighborhoods selling commercially, is that what?
The question would be is to keep it as an HOA. Okay, keep the ordinance the way it is. Okay, where it was just made a motion second, keep it the way it is, and then to be able to give a variance if there is a variance based off of the situation. Let's just say there is a non-HOA. Is there any law that we'd be breaking when it comes to the city manager determining that? Because again, then it's be more selective and it could be some type of prejudice. So I just didn't know if there was anything that we could be breaking.
I'm sorry. Currently, what I recall from the proposal is you can have it in a non-HOA place. It just has to be a community event. And to get a community event, they come to the city manager or planning director for a permit.
So that's the workaround. I guess that's the workaround.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that, Mr. Justice?
That's what he's proposed.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the workaround. Okay.
Mr. Mullally.
What about restrooms? What about restrooms?
There's nothing addressing restrooms on this amendment or
Right.
the amendment or the proposal to amend the amendment. Going to amend the amendment again? Oh, yeah. Commissioner Hefner says he's got a suggestion for the restroom separate from this. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, we have a amendment to the amendment to include non-HOAs, which I think we're going to need to reword the original amendment to make that work altogether, which would be network community events means a non-commercial event located within a residential subdivision, which may be open to the public and which is approved by the planning director, city administrator by permit. Community events are to be held on private property within residential developments. A neighborhood community event must be determined by the planning director, city administrator to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored. Well, I guess we'd strike that. Community benefit or a group of homeowners or other organizations, not one individual. Well, to pass this, we're going to have to change the wording of the first amendment to include the HOA language back on there, because the first one had specific language excluding HOAs. I mean, excluding non-HOAs. So, yes, ma'am.
Just so I'm clear, because I'm trying to take minutes. I know she was too, and she may have gotten this. I didn't. You guys are voting on just what Commissioner Justice made the motion for only non-HOA subdivisions right now. Is that what you're? The first motion that Commissioner Hefner made was, last sentence reads, a neighborhood community event must be determined by the planning director or city administrator to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored by the HOA. And then he struck, or a group of homeowners or other organization, not one individual.
So you would just recommend striking at the end of community benefit, just striking everything past that.
If you guys are wanting to allow it carte blanche for non-HOA or HOAs, but I think the beauty of having that last sentence in there, or a group of homeowners or organization, not one individual, really limits that to not every single person in the neighborhood can organize an event.
Yeah, my suggestion was to strike must be sponsored by the HOA and just community benefit. Oh, well, let's see, this must be approved, must provide an overall community benefit and be sponsored by a group of homeowners or other organization, not one individual. I guess just striking the HOA piece.
On Commissioner Justice's motion?
Yes, that's.
Mhm. So your
because-
two motions, one for HOA only, one for non-HOA.
Well,
Gotcha.
so you're suggesting separate language then for the two?
Well, I just think it's going to be one or the other. It's either going to be exactly how it's written right now, which
Mhm.
is what Commissioner Justice wants. Commissioner Hefner suggested striking or a group of homeowners or other organization, not one individual, considering that the original paragraph defining this neighborhood
You are
community event
correct,
was
because
denied.
it's saying or, and I keep reading as and, so it's saying must be sponsored by the HOA or a group of homeowners, which will cover both.
Yes, sir.
We all in agreement?
Which failed previously.
Well, we'll say.
Trying to unfail it.
This failed previously.
But if it's already failed once, then can we bring back an amendment, city attorney? So I'm getting a no.
We can't. We've done it. If you change the wording on it, you can bring it back.
Change the wording.
I just
can't
did.
bring the exact same thing.
I just changed the wording and brought it back. We've already done it once.
It's a different provision. It's a different provision.
It accomplishes the same thing, which is if you want to restrict HOAs, if you're going to unrestrict HOA, you need to unrestrict non-HOAs. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. So,
So the motion is, your motion is basically to change this to read, neighborhood community events means a non-commercial event located within a residential subdivision which may be open to the public and which is approved by the planning director, city administrator by permit. Community events are to be held on private property within the residential development. A neighborhood community event must be determined by the planning director, city administrator to provide an overall community benefit and must be sponsored by the HOA or a group of homeowners or other organizations, not one individual.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So
the
it's
exact
originally
same
presented.
wording that was offered the first time.
I'm good with it.
Any other questions or comments on it? Go get it from my lady.
Doesn't this once again change the definition of private property?
Well, originally, Mayor Manis added private property owned by the HOA. So this original version would allow those food trucks to be placed in driveways, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so once again, we're changing the definition of private property.
well, we're not really changing the definition of it, but it's saying two different things. So this would
Yeah,
say
'cause
you
it
can either
keeps
park
going
it on
back and
HOA
forth,
private
back and
property
forth.
or individual private property. Yes, ma'am.
Well, earlier, it was noted that private property was HOA owned. Okay, so, but once again, we're changing the definition to include driveways.
Well, driveways, maybe yards. It's got to be driveways, correct?
And,
Driveways, yards,
and empty lots,
empty lots.
correct? This is a nightmare.
Cow pastures.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. Well, that carries. So, I guess that, that replaces the first piece in its entirety anyway. So I don't think that we need to take any further action on that with this passing.
So where are we at?
Well, that was the 6th amendment to the ordinance. Commissioner Hefner has another amendment.
Since we've added non-HOAs, I think it only, and even in some HOAs, there are no restrooms. Think of Triple Crown right now, off the top of my head. They've got a playground, parking, but they don't have a bathroom. So, and certainly non-HOA residents will not have public restrooms. So, I'd like to strike the bathroom requirement. That's a motion.
Which page, sir?
That would, well, I'm looking at it in the summary. It's on packet page 45.
Yes. Number 1, where it says provided restroom facilities are available.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second on striking the bathrooms?
Second.
All right. We got a vice mayor seconds the striking of the restrooms. Any questions or comments on the advisement of having restroom facilities available to people consuming drinks and eating? Commissioner Justice.
I know that in events, I've used Willoughby Station, for example. They've had multiple day events over there in the past. And if they have 2-day events, I think they're required to have bathrooms over there, aren't they? Or they've got bathrooms?
I'm not aware of any 2-day events, but they do
It's been
have
a couple years ago,
bathrooms.
they had one over there. It was actually, it was right after the tornadoes.
That was probably done under the state of emergency.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I mean, what I would worry about is if there was a multiple day event to take place, then it would need to be bathrooms, but just a 1-day event, probably
I
not.
like it. Only hold it for 24 hours.
There you go. So how do we adjust that? Ms. Hamlin, any idea? Suggestions?
Say after 24, how about this? Provided restroom facilities are available after 24 hours of usage. Will that work?
Of multiple days.
So is that an amendment to
Yes,
the
sir, please.
amendment? All right. Well, the event would start out on the first day and restrooms would not be available. But if you held it long enough after the 24-hour period, a bathroom would need to be provided at that point.
But there's no overnight parking.
You would have to stand there, I guess, all day or night.
He said hold it for 24 hours. What I'm basically saying is if they apply for and get permission from the zoning planning to have a multiple day event for whatever reason, wherever it may be, then they would have to have bathrooms porta potties would be brought to that location for the multiple day event. If that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. I mean, if you want to have 3 or 4 days or 2 days, then have porta potties delivered.
Yeah, I think now we have 2 days max, right? Okay, so it's 2 days max and they can't
One-day
spend the
event,
night,
close enough. Don't worry about it. But
And
it
it-
could be multiple days.
but they can't, there's no overnight parking. So I don't see the point because
Right.
they're going to leave and go home and then come back the next day.
Director Hamlin, do you still like to be recognized on the advisement of restrooms or not? Okay. All right, we have an amendment to the amendment to after 24 hours or a multi-day event that restrooms will be required. I don't know if that means delivering porta potties to someone's front yard or what, which I imagine runs afoul of other city codes. Afoul. Pardon the pun.
Sorry.
City attorney has had enough, I think,
I
of
think
this.
just in the interest of moving on, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, that has zero impact on whether or not you had to have porta potties there. I mean, that's just from legal, illegal, any other prospect. I'm just trying to understand how, if it's multi-day, you're not going to go to the bathroom
It's
the
called
first day.
sanitary. Y'all may do it different in Brentwood or up there for y'all.
Oh, and it-
But we-
If you're there for 1 day, you're going to need restrooms, or you're not going to need restrooms. So whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So I guess my point is to enforce it, either you have restrooms required or you don't have restrooms. And 24, 48, 72 hours.
Hey, Mayor,
really
can we
doesn't
just
have
say,
anything to
I'm
do with
pulling it back. I, at this point, don't care. We have spent, 2.5 hours, I think,
Mhm.
talking about a freaking food truck.
Yes, we have.
Can we please move on to the?
Oh, I'd
budget?
love to move on.
Let's just, this is first reading, right? Can we just bring the suggestions out and email them out and then we can talk about them at the next meeting? So we got another 2.5 hours.
Well, who was it that seconded the restroom requirements?
Please go
Okay,
ahead.
there's agreement to pull it back, so we're back to striking provided restroom facilities are available out of item 1 under the summary. That's what we're at now. There's no amendment to that. Any other questions or comments on whether we should have restrooms available or not?
So what is the question?
There's just an amendment to strike from as part of item number 1 under the summary, which would strike the requirements provided restroom facilities are available.
So that's what's up for vote is to strike the
The
restrooms.
restroom requirement.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So what about the food vendors? Where are they going to go to the restroom? If they
I-
can be there from 10 to 10,
I guess in the
where are they going
person's
to the
house
restroom?
that's having them.
Is this a yes or no?
I can't answer that. And I don't know that we can govern that. Is there any other questions or comments on it? All in favor of striking the provided restroom facilities?
That's fine. You
We-
got a quorum?
All in favor of striking provided restroom facilities are available, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. So restrooms will be a requirement. All right, yes, for a 3-hour event. That's the 7th amendment to this. All right. Any other questions or comments on this ordinance as amended 7 times?
Are we on the original?
We're back on the original as amended 7 times, yes.
Well, I would like to say something.
You have the floor.
All right, I'm going to make a prediction. If this goes beyond December, this is going to be a total nightmare. It's going to be a tight nightmare before, but if it goes beyond December, this is going to cost the city extra money because there is no way one planning tech can take care of all this. And so we're going to have to end up getting another planning tech plus a vehicle. This is going to expand government, talking about government,
Yes,
growing
ma'am.
government.
Anything on the ordinance is
No,
7 times amended? All right, all in favor of the ordinance as amended 7 times, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Sorry, he's not here. Any opposed?
no.
Nay. Lacking 2, that's a tie, which this means this fails. It's 2-2.
Yep.
Well,
Well, he wasn't at the table when the vote was called. Well, that's the rule.
no.
It's the rule.
That's Bush League.
No, we didn't rush to no votes. 2 commissioners walked. We still had a quorum on this. As I said from the beginning, I was totally amenable to trying to pass something, but this has, I think, gone off the rails, as evidenced by 2.5 hours of debate on something that could have been passed and moved forward in 30 minutes. If the commissioner comes back and wants to ask for a reconsideration, that can be addressed. But if there's a motion to reconsider after the commissioner returns, I'll assume that everybody is happy with the outcome and we can move on to the next item.
Where'd it go?
10.2, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance to appropriate funds for an addition of a planning technician for the Mount Juliet Planning Department. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, this drops. 10.3, a resolution to adopt and authorize the city manager to sign the development agreement between the city of Mount Juliet and to form a joint venture between Mark Lineberry and Image One Company with the intention of a public-private partnership is to be developed a new downtown space with highly integrated city offices, city commission chambers, parking garage, retail office, and multifamily living.
Motion.
Have a motion?
Second.
A second. 10.3 is on the floor for consideration.
Mayor, I'd like to amend. if I may.
Commissioner Justice, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. The first part of this where, let me find it here. Where it says development agreement on the contract, I would like to amend that, and the language should be, I would like to change any language where the development agreement is mentioned and change that to a non-binding memorandum of understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Marquetti? Would that work? That allows us to move forward without doing a binding contract, but we do want to move forward. That's not taking anything out of it.
Okay, and that was your motion.
Yes,
Was there a
sir.
second on that?
Second.
Second. Okay, we're on the floor with that one. Are you talking about amending the resolution? Because it says an attached development agreement. So
Well-
you would change that to attached memorandum of understanding?
Actually, what I'm referring to is anything that refers to a development agreement would be changed to a non-binding memorandum of understanding. That allows us to move forward and continue with the spirit, just not with the binding agreement that our city attorney has some concerns about. And am I explaining that right, Mr. Marquetti?
That sounds good.
Okay.
There's just some pieces missing in here that need to be
Okay.
added.
And we can
discussed.
shore those up as we go along with an agreement. I think everybody here's, I will say that I don't think we're going to get a better opportunity than what we've got here to work through this process. But we just need to make sure we're not painted into a corner while we do it.
Why don't we do this? Let's vote on the change for the memorandum to understanding. And then let's hear from our attorney on any other things that he suggests. Something good path forward,
Yeah, non-binding,
non-binding memorandum of understanding.
correct. I'm sorry.
You want to hear from them before this vote or on this vote? Let's get representation up here.
Good evening, Matt Gardner, 4603 Skymont Drive. What we're trying to accomplish with this agreement is to move to the next phase of this. I think with our working session we had before the meeting last time, we had the two options, and really to take that next step, we need the two major things are, or I guess three is, if we are moving forward, which of the two design options do we like? I think there was a lot of consensus on the second one. And then we need, our next step will be to work towards the PUD for the whole city block. As the city owns a big chunk of that for the application, we'll need someone from the city, I assume the city manager, to be authorized to execute that application. I think my understanding, talking to the city manager, is you guys need to give him that authority to do so. And then the second is the funding for the design portion of City Hall. So the real goal of this agreement is to really accomplish those three things. And I'm sure there's other ways to do that. So we're absolutely open to any mechanisms. Are there specific questions about that?
Well, and I agree with, we want to do that. There are some other pieces to this puzzle. We want to make sure that we have an opportunity to put in there. For instance, we want to make sure that we've got an opportunity to, have, for instance, we want a formal appraisal done on all of our existing properties so that we know that
Absolutely.
we're getting the proper credit for those.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that there's anything in this particular agreement that actually allows for or doesn't allow for that. So we want to make sure that's addressed. Do y'all
Absolutely.
have legal? Do y'all have an attorney that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, we would pass this as a non-binding memorandum of understanding at this point, and then we would ask that, like, for instance, in the next 5 days or 10 days or whatever, that your attorneys get together and y'all start hammering out some of those details so we can address them in a more formal and more binding manner.
Absolutely. Well, we had hoped to have done that, and so we would love for an opportunity to do so. We were hoping to do that before today, but
So,
yes,
I mean,
sir.
Mr. Mayor, can we ask Mr. Marquetti if he could make that happen? Mr. Marquetti?
Let me just ask, Matt, tell me again what the three, and part of my question, there's nothing here about price of anything that's being done. So tell me again what the three things are that you want this to accomplish?
Yes, sir. And a lot of that was accomplished in the working session we had 2 weeks ago, including the budget item, was the design fees. None of that comes to us. That all goes to the architects, all the engineers. And that totals, it's just under $1 million to take all the way through to get construction drawings. And that's through permits, that's through all that. And the assumption is during that time, we're working with the board and showing them the design to make sure that's not we leave, we come back, here's the project. There's multiple opportunities for the city to have input. We'll be working closely with the city manager and his team to make sure that the building is suiting what you guys need. So the design dollars for City Hall is the first portion of it. We'll obviously pay for the design for the rest of the city block. The second is.
Hold on. So
Yes,
the city's committing to pay $1 million or not to exceed $1 million
Not to exceed. Yes, sir.
to design this 44,000 square foot building
Yes, sir.
and the finish of 33 million or 33,000 square
Yes.
feet. Okay. And if they decide not to build it, they're still out $1 million.
Yes, sir.
And if,
Obviously, if they would like to, if at some point during that process, they decide to stop, we stop and we stop incurring costs,
all right,
or they stop incurring
Mhm.
costs.
go ahead. Your second thing?
The second thing is to have, we need to apply as part of this design process. We will need to put a PUD in place for the city block. The city owns a about half of the city block. And so we need the city to agree as portion as the landowner of the applicant.
And is that part of that $1 million?
Yes,
the
sir.
Design fee for that?
Yes, sir.
So it'll
Just,
be-
well, most of that design for the PUD is on our side. That's not a city cost. There'll be the city building and city hall design will need to progress beyond where it is today. And that portion of the design will be included in that cost.
Okay.
But
And
the
the
majority
third-
of the PUD preparation process is on me.
And the third?
And the third piece is which design the city liked.
And those two designs are,
They were shown in, I've got copies of them. if
are
you
they
need me to
called
run
like
you
Design Plan 1 or
And
Design?
1 and 2, yes, sir. There seemed to be Design 2 was the one that seemed to folks like during the working session 2 weeks ago.
And then when does the appraisal of the property and all that interact? Is that before anybody starts designing buildings that's decided upon?
Well, that was a question from Commissioner Justice that he would like to see. We did an appraisal based on previous conversations on land value. I assume Commissioner Justice is wanting something beyond that. What do you?
I'm sorry.
He was asking about the appraisal and when that would come in.
We last had conversation, Mayor, I'm sorry. Last conversation we had, the appraisals were being brought on the land
Yes.
and the buildings that existed were not part of the consideration. And I don't think we're getting proper value when we don't take in consideration the fact that these buildings are currently being used and we're going to be
Yes.
replacing those and you guys are getting those. So, you know, I think probably if I were in your position, I'd be trying to get the land, not worry about the buildings, but we're on the other side of that. So we want an opportunity to have not only the appraisal done on the land, but on the buildings.
And we're happy to assist. If the city's going to do an appraisal there, we're happy to assist any way that you need us to do so.
Yeah, I think that it would be in our best interest to do that prior to any kind of a binding
Sure.
paper be.
Well,
agreed
and you know, one thing we did mention during the working session 2 weeks ago, obviously the city hall construction cost and all the details of the financing, you know, depends on the building that gets designed. You know, does it end up being exactly 44,000 feet? After we do the initial work with the city manager and his team, does it come out, hey, we really only need a 39,000 square foot building? Or, you know, those are all round numbers based on what we know today. What we're trying to do is move on and really start to get all the specifics done.
And I
so-
think a binding agreement would be not on round numbers, but on exact
Absolutely.
numbers. So that's the reason I'm saying, let's do a non-binding memorandum of understanding, and then we can move forward, you know, with very specific numbers and dollar amounts and things of that nature, Mayor. So.
We just need there's quite a significant cost to get City Hall to the point where we can get that specific number. And so we just, you know, that's not something that we can incur on our side to get the City Hall building designed fully. But yes, I'm not asking you guys to agree to the full City Hall construction cost today. So I'm with you, Commissioner Justice.
City manager.
Sorry, folks are on. If the commission wanted or directed me to do the appraisal on all the properties, I think the 5 that's on the list, I could get that done, and it could probably have it done under one company just to do them all. It'd probably be easier to do it that way. It may take a little bit to do that, and I'd have to check with Dana see if there's any monies in the budget or something like that for that many properties. Even example, a typical cost just for a single building piece of properties, $2,500 to $3,000. So maybe it would be more than that, of course, but if that's something that the commission wants to do for the value of the land plus the buildings that are on the land today. I just want to get clarification since we were coming up on the budget. Well, we could definitely do that. We've got an existing appraisal in process now on another facility. It's not city property, but we can definitely do that. If it's the will of the commission, we'll tackle it.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, total agreement that all these steps have to be completed. But this agreement is, do we want to get started or not? And then we got our attorney here scouring over to make sure that we're not committing ourselves to anything. But in a sense, we are committing to the design cost once this well, it's non-binding, but if we move forward, we're committed to the design cost on it, and we don't know what the design cost is going to be.
Yes, it is just under $1 million. It was in the presentation. I've got a full
Yeah.
breakdown of the cost that I'm happy to pass out to the commission this evening if you'd like to see that.
So that's the design cost for City Hall is just under $1 million.
Yes, sir. And that gets you all the way through. That includes, that's all engineers, architects, all the way through to final construction drawings, including all the work they do when they submit for building permits, all the review, and during the full bidding process to get the actual construction budget a year from now.
Okay. City Manager.
Mayor, the commission during our executive session asked me to task me with trying to figure out what we did with the police department as a comparable. 3% of total project general concept cost, so $906,000 for 44,000 square feet in design and architecture fees. That includes everything from the building to the type of furniture that would be utilized in the building.
And that cost does include all the interior build out as well. So I think that's probably a pretty
If that
apples to
helps.
apples.
It puts it in perspective. Commissioner Maletti.
And the stipulation was it's not to exceed $1 million. Is that correct?
Based on that. And then the last thing would be city review at each one of these steps. So if the appraisal comes in first to figure out the total cost to the city, we get a credit for the value of the land. So if the appraisals say $2 million and we're expecting $6 million, then in my mind, I don't think we'd be moving forward with a $15 million or $16 million building that we thought might be 1/3 paid by the price of the land. That's just me asking. So before you commit to $1 million of design, there's some other steps before that, including what are we looking at for the value of the property that you're going to get a credit for. So to me, that would seem to be first. So you're working with real numbers.
And knowing if we're going to get enough off the property to be able to make the deal work. But Commissioner Justice.
Mayor, I think we're kind of headed towards, we're kind of going where we didn't want to go. And then we're sitting here talking about what we're going to do and what the contract's going to look like and all the rest of that. When I think my motion actually allows us to put all this off to the side and still move forward and work through those details at a later date, tomorrow or Friday. So if we could, and I don't want to call for question.
Well, no. I think to your point, making it non-binding does let us tap the brakes at any step on this. So are you in agreement with that?
Yes, that was it. I was just trying to address
You're right.
whatever those 3 or 4 or 5 key things that may need to happen before, even with the non-binding memorandum of understanding, to make it clear there's still some pieces that need to be plugged in before you commit to spend $1 million.
I think everybody at this table is probably in agreement that we don't want to inadvertently vote ourselves a $1 million invoice.
No.
We're not expecting you to do that. No, sir.
Any other questions and comments on the amendment? City Manager.
Sorry, Mayor, I know in the commission, I know it's a long night. Just an idea, if the, imagine one could supply the appraisals on the land, it may be I could just have the appraisals done on just the buildings if the land's already been done, just to figure out that number and then work with Mr. Gardner to see if whatever that number that comes back for the buildings as well, if that's the desire of the commission, see if that even, it makes sense to both sides at that time. And that'd be a question for Mr. Gardner as well, and the commission.
Mr. Gardner seems agreeable.
Yep, we're happy to provide that. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that may be worth noting is to Mr. Marchetti's point about cost is, we're making a lot of assumptions on the construction cost of the City Hall building. And I think as we get into the first conceptual phase of design, especially that very first phase, we'll know a lot more about what the city's expectations on finish level, on size are. Because during that phase, we'll do a lot of the meetings with the city departments to figure out how much space they need. And that building could change size by a pretty significant amount too, which will go back to, hey, maybe that's $14 million or $13 million building only actually needs to be 11. And that will obviously matter that, but that's not an insignificant design cost or time to get to that point that we'll do that. That's going back to the conversations we had with a lot of your department chairs a year ago when we started this process to kind of figure out more what you guys have now for city meeting or city office space, or what's being used as office space and looking forward. So I think that first design phase, we'll be able to tighten these numbers up a lot if there's funds available to do so.
All right, we ready to vote on the amendment? All right, all in favor of the amendment to change to a non-binding memorandum of understanding, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Back on the resolution as once amended. Any other questions or comments on that? All in favor of the resolution as once amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 10-3 carries and passes. Vice Mayor?
First of all, I'd like to apologize for stepping out, but I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the zoning ordinance for the food trucks. Unfortunately, I did step out, and I think the staff here did spend a lot of time on it. So I just want to see if
So that's a motion to reconsider 10-1. I'll ask our city attorney. We've got a motion to reconsider an item that's been voted.
As long as the meeting hasn't adjourned. Yes.
That was where I was going. But is there a second for the reconsideration? I think we got one anyway. So all in favor of reconsidering 10-1, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This item is back on the agenda as the point, I guess, where it failed, as amended 7 times. Is that correct, Mr. Attorney? Correct. All right, we're right back at where we were when it failed. I'll start by saying this since we're back on the floor. Not trying to exclude you, but if your vote wasn't going to be any different, I didn't see any point in waiting. But obviously, you either have more to add or want to change the vote on that, and that's fine. And we want to make sure all voices are heard on it. I will say I feel like I made a great effort to get something I could support approved. And when we took the HOA amenity center restriction off of it and opened it up for a free for all, that was a bridge too far for me. But other than that, I was very happy to support this. Who else would like to speak, or are we ready to vote again on it as it is amended 7 times? Vice Mayor?
Okay. Well, obviously this was a 2.5-hour conversation. I do support Mayor on the dedication that was trying to get something in place. I do see a 6-month opportunity for the city to evaluate how this is going to work and make sure that we can stay on track to be able to provide a service to the community as well as our local businesses. If these businesses do flourish and they are able to build that brick and mortar, that's even better for us. But I think you opened my eyes up when it came to that 6-month opportunity, and unfortunately, I stepped out to try to do something good for our city employees tonight by ordering them some pizza, and unfortunately, I missed that vote. So I was wanting to make sure that we had an opportunity to bring it back up, and thank you for giving me a second. So thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? All in favor of 10-1 as amended 7 times, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. That does carry with a vote of 3-2. So 10-1 does advance. This is an item for amendments from the Planning Commission So this will skip a meeting and be back on the last meeting of June. And I'm looking for a correction if I'm wrong, and that's correct. So we'll skip the first meeting on that. Commissioner Mullally, you may be on the same wavelength as myself. You have the floor.
Can I make a motion to bring back 10-2?
It's a motion to reconsider 10-2, and I'll second. All in favor of the reconsideration of 10-2, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I hold my vote for 1 second? Because I want to read this one more time, or is it too late? Before we start, can I reread that if you don't mind? And my apologies.
Yes, and actually, I'll read it here. I should have done that, which is 10-2, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance 2022-2032 to appropriate funds for an addition of the planning technician for the Mount Juliet Planning Department. That is 10-2. So
My apologies.
no, you were just fine to clarify that,
Question.
Commissioner.
Since this is already in the budget, do we even need to vote on this budget variance or this budget amendment? It's in the budget.
City manager, is the vehicle included in the budget?
Yes, sir. So what we could do here, since there's a 6-month sunset clause, is just is do the work on the front end with the included staff. Because the last thing you want to do is hire somebody now and then decide you don't want to do it in 6 months and then have to let them go. So what we would do is not bring the person on we would do it internally, and then at 6 months,
If
with the vote of the commission, add the person full-time, bring a car on.
if we could get this on the floor, there was a motion second to reconsider this. So I'm going to ask for a vote on that. All in favor of reconsidering 10-2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And so 10-2 is back on the floor. And yes, I think Commissioner Hefner made a point here about this being captured in the upcoming budget. Because if this passes on second reading, it's going to be the last meeting of June. I suppose on second reading, we could amend it another time to make the ordinance take effect July 1st, so we would align better with that timing on it. But I am concerned without having that body plus the additional work on that. I don't know if temporary labor or something, attempt to hire, if this goes forward or something. I don't want to just leave planning to go fend for themselves with this, because we don't know what we don't know.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I walked out. Can you please go over what was the vote on this and what was changed?
On 10-2, absolutely nothing.
Okay.
It's just back as presented
Okay.
on the agenda.
So what was it? What's the reconsideration?
It didn't get a second since 10-1 failed. 10-2 didn't get a second.
I see.
I think the logic was, or at least for me, if 10-1 didn't pass, then we didn't need the planning technician.
I got you.
Now that 10-1
Okay.
has passed,
I didn't
Commissioner
realize
Mullally-
that. I wasn't
Yeah.
here. Okay.
that's what I said with Commissioner Mullally. I said, I think we're on the same page, because I think she was seeing the need for this with the passage of 10-1. Commissioner Justice? Correct.
If we passed it tonight, if I'm not mistaken, would it not follow the same course as the budget?
You're not wrong about that. It would follow the same course as the budget. I just really wanted it on the floor to make the statement about she still may need some help, and I didn't want to see the position stripped totally, because it's a chance of being a 6 months. So that's why I was making the suggestion, maybe attempt to hire or something with that.
It's
But-
added into the budget though as it stands now. Is that right?
Correct.
So it would actually pass at the exact same time.
Correct. We do not have to
So we're not
pass this.
accomplishing anything, I don't think, by doing it now, are we?
So I'll
Okay.
I'll make the motion to table 10-2 for. I'll make the motion to defer 10-2 for one meeting or two meetings when it comes back with TIM 1 in case there's a consideration or something changes on TIM 1 that will require the need for it. If not, it can just go away with the budget. So that's a motion to defer 2 meetings.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor of deferring 10-2 for 2 meetings, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is deferred for 2 meetings. We're on the new business. We got 3 items under consent. I will read those quickly. 11-1, a resolution approving an agreement between the city of Mount Juliet, Tennessee and Reagan Smith for bid services on the East Division Street traffic signal project and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. 11-2, a resolution approving an amendment to the agreement between the city of Mount Juliet, Tennessee and the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the widening of Mount Juliet Roads, SR 171, bridge over the Interstate 40, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. 11-3 is an ordinance amending fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance 2022-32 for insurance proceeds and appropriate the funds for the repair of a traffic signal. Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on those 3 items on consent? The bridge over the interstate was an agreement to bill us once they got the final bill. And am I summarizing that appropriately? Yes.
Okay.
So that is the final bill. And as far as I know, that's all budgeted and everything, but we had to sign that agreement for that. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the 3 items on consent, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carry. The next item under new business is an ordinance of the city of Mount Juliet, Tennessee to adopt the annual budget, property tax rate, and sewer rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. Motion and a second. The budget is on the table. We want to vote? No, we don't. Commissioner Mullally.
All right. I went through it and compared the numbers from the work session. So there's some increases. So I would just like to know what they are. We'll start with the parks, satellite parks, $150,000. What is this for?
That is an increase in the Cedar Creek Greenway to modify the boardwalk for safety concerns.
Okay, because this is a brand new.
Yeah, there was did you get the listing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. I just want to clarify.
Mhm.
All right. That $50,000 on the total capital, that's that vehicle. Well, I know it is. All right, PD vehicle equipment, 17,005. Just curious what it is.
That's money that's budgeted this year. They couldn't get to the installs on our vehicles. And so we're just moving it over to next year.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. On page 24, can you explain the $35,895 between this? Where's he at? Oh. I was talking to you and didn't even notice you weren't there. 24, page 24. Budget, page 24.
Which book do you have, sir?
This is the first reading.
Is this the May 22nd first reading book
Yeah.
or the May 15th first reading book?
No, this is May 22nd.
Okay. So you have, look at the cover on the thing, the actual cover of the notebook. So you have the,
Tyler's getting it for you. Yes. but I don't know what it is yet.
Is there a question?
There wasn't a question, but the commissioner was getting the commissioner on the same page with the book.
Okay, you on page 24? All right, under economic development, total for personnel is an increase of $35,895. Kenny, can you explain the removal of the two City Beautifuls and adding the codes for 92-120? Can you explain all that?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, originally, Mr. Potts was asking for 3 personnel, 2 City Beautiful employees, and then 1 codes person. So we basically just eliminated the 2 City Beautiful positions and stuck with codes. It was the more important, and I explained to him we were just asking for a lot of positions this year, and that was 2 that we could live without for this year. So that was a change there.
All right. Page 14. Another question for, well, it could be a question for Dana. On the under grants for other, I know that we took that $4,000 out for the library.
Mhm.
All right, so and then on next page 15, there is for operating expenses under general government, there's an increase of 14,500. And I know what you did with the numbers and then for you, Dana, there was an increase of 2,000.
Yes.
Just wondering what that was.
was the audit fees.
That's right. You said that. All right. So I know what you did with the numbers, which is the total ended up being 14,500. But what I don't get is, since that's operations, how the library figured into that, since that wasn't operating, it was listed under other.
So, I'm sorry, what's your question again?
All right. Under city manager operations, there was an increase of 16,500.
Oh, are you wanting to know where the other falls into play? Where that comes in to the total?
Because the total is 14,500. And I see what you did with the numbers, because it figured in that $4,000 decrease from the library. But since that's not operating, it's listed under other. Just
I think
wondered.
it's still included in operating. I think we just separated it out because
Okay.
to keep the community grants total separate.
Okay. All right. On page 8. All right, now this is a compare, if you look in page 8 on the work session budget. Under prior 1984, under the column 2023 rate, in the work session binder, you got $15.76 for flat rate, and well access is $30.20. But then in the new budget, under prior 1984, for flat rate, you got an increase of 63 cents, and under well access is an increase of $1.21.
Okay, those should be the same as last year, so I'll go back and look and make sure
Okay.
that I pulled the right numbers.
Okay. All right, and then 2 more. Fire, can you explain the reduction in $492,660 reduction in personnel?
Which line is it? Capital or operating?
Well, if you look on page 41, you see the personnel request where,
I can answer that one for you.
okay,
So what had happened was when we were when we make our payroll changes, we have a payroll sheet. And when we had combined the EMS and the fire, those additions actually got included in the payroll sheet. So they are up in the numbers at the top, and then I did not realize that they were already in the sheet, and I added them at the bottom. So it basically duplicated those numbers.
Okay.
So I had to take those out.
Okay. One more question has to do under the increase of $3 million for the Lebanon Road widening project that's under the line item of easements and land, I believe it is. If we could get Matt to come up.
Yeah, that would say that was Andy's parting gift to Ray Justice. After the last discussion from the work session, Ray requested that we added some funding on the project as enticement to get TDOT to fund the next phase, which is right away. We're going to continue those conversations. We're not giving any money to them until we have an agreement. They'll fund the remaining part of right away, but it's in there in case we can come to agreement with TDOT to fund the right away phase. I was at a meeting on Friday where Chief Engineer Will Reed was speaking, and he was talking about the state's recently passed budget. So they've moved $3 billion from their general fund over to TDOT to fund projects. Those $3 billion hasn't been assigned to any projects yet. So from now until December, they're going to work on putting that funding into these projects to get them accelerated. One of the specific items in that law is Improve Act Acceleration Program. So they're going to use that $3 billion to help get these Improve Act projects, which we have 4 of in our city, to much further along. So we'll know more between now and December. But if we want to make these Improve Act projects more enticing to TDOT, we need to put more skin in the game, essentially.
All right. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Justice.
Ms. Dana, there was $10 million that we received from the federal government.
Mhm.
And I think we put that in under personnel as so that we could capture it.
Yes.
Okay. Without the federal government taking it back,
Right.
I think. But so how would we put this money into our capital transfers towards, and I'm not sure what I'm looking for. I know that we've got several capital projects that are out there. I mean, the City Hall project that we're talking about, and that $10 million would pretty much pay for a largest portion of that. So how would we take that $10 million and put it into our budget so that we have that sitting there, but knowing we could use that for the?
You would have to do similar to what you did for the interchange. You just do a resolution to reserve that $10 million for a specific project.
But it's
And
already been
hold
put in towards personnel.
No, well, it was used. It can be used for any government service. So basically, it freed up the 10 million to use for something else. So the 10 million in revenue just goes into available fund balance at the end of the year. So it'll be there in fund balance. And then you'll just set up a reserve for a specific project, those funds.
So we essentially were able to account for it in case anybody at Washington wanted it back.
Yes. It had to be spent, it had to be obligated by a certain time frame and then spent by a certain time frame. And we've exceeded those. So
Okay.
that 10 million is, you just need to decide how you want to.
Okay. Now,
But right now it'll be in available fund balance.
So. No, I can't focus now. I'm sorry, you brought food. Okay, so the $10 million that we've got for the new City Hall, we do need to reserve that money and do that by resolution. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that's what I would do.
Okay. All right. We also had, there's I think it's 1.7, and I'm looking at my notes, 1.7 for the property on Clemens Road.
Yes, that's in the budget.
Okay. And after having some conversations with various people, would like to ask that we keep that in the budget. But I would like to also make sure that we put in that would sell a portion of that afterwards to recoup. Because by keeping it in the budget, I negotiated to get a discount on the additional acreage. So the only way we get that discount is by buying the total.
Yeah, I've got no problems with sitting on that land. We get our money back. There's very few opportunities we're going to get 20 acre plots I don't know that we have to rush off and sell it immediately, because there may be some discussions about a lot of things that could happen on 20 acres.
Yeah, I don't think we need to be hoarding land as a city either, but I think we do need to capitalize on that discounted per acre price without losing that.
I agree.
So I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with buying it, but I'm not comfortable with just sitting on it forever. That's 20 acres of land. The city is exempt from paying any kind of taxes on, so it's not revenue producing at all. And I mean, unless we want to become like Washington D.C. and become the biggest landowner and and employer in the country, and I don't think we want that.
If you're going to have sports complexes and all the other things, you got to start with land.
Sports complexes are best run by people who run sports complexes, not cities.
Okay. Don't email
Private
me.
enterprise needs to be involved in that, not my taxpayers' money. Also, Commissioner Hefner found, and I think when y'all worked together to get that interest increase, I think there was like $2.5 million in revenue that's producing, but there's a net. What was the net on that? Was it 1.25, 1.5? You know? Go ahead. Somebody. Yes, please.
So the initial transfer into the new money market vehicles was 49 million, which took it from, I think it was 1.75 to
2.
It was two. Okay, so they bumped it a quarter.
Yeah.
Before the
2,
meeting.
It was 2 and then 2. Portions of it is at 4.75 and then there's another portion that's at 5. And the maturities are different.
So I guess what is the
2.7?
increase?
So the difference is 2.75% on 50. Call it $50 million.
Okay, so what is the actual net increase for 1 year?
Oh,
2.75 times 40 million.
I went to Mount Juice. You're going to have to help me with the math. I'm sorry.
It's going to be about a 1.434.
1.4 million.
I don't know. I think Commissioner Trevet's on his calculator.
1.23 million.
1.23.
1.23 million, and then based on the budget tonight, right? There's an additional potentially 30 million that we can place in those same investment vehicles to generate another. I'm not sure what the rates are now. 5.75.
yeah, pretty well. I don't know. I haven't gotten them currently.
So another 800, 900,000.
Okay, and we're talking about 25 million in potential bond going to the police department building.
That's up to you. Yeah, however you want to do that. But yeah, you could do a borrowing.
I was going to ask, what is the debt service on that? Do you know? Approximate?
I don't have those numbers run.
Didn't
And I
you say it was-
I don't have current rates either. I have the rates from like a month or so ago, or a couple months ago, I would say, which were at 2.5% to 3.5%, depending on maturities. So there was a potential earning, but there's the timing. The timing is key. We can't do that until we are ready to spend that money, pretty much.
Okay, well, we do need to know what the cost of that bond is, what our debt service across the board is, and then we find out what the cost. Because I mean, we're looking at potentially a year's revenue here being, what you said, 1.23 million
plus another.
So on a 10-year bond note, how much more or less would that be? Because that might actually be the cost. Give or take a few dollars, but we may be able to pay for that just by his savings alone.
Mm-hmm.
to a large extent, I would say. Would you not agree?
Oh, no, I'd agree 100%. So assuming that rates stay where they're at or flat or higher
But
over the
it
next
also
2 to 3
depends
years.
on what you do with this and when these purchased. Like you've got a $9 million building on here. I can't put $30 million in a CD if I'm gonna spend 9 on a building. So I have the timing of all of these things is key to look at as well.
Well, we've got some other opportunities in regards to a $9 million building that we need to talk about between now and the second reading on this. I'm not real sure that needs to stay in.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like
Does it?
there's a lot of moving pieces and parts. So I would commit to putting a certain amount until I know what you guys are wanting to do. And then I have to go out and look at, okay, what's our best options?
I don't think any amendment should take place at this point without getting the information together. I mean, that $9 million building doesn't need to be captured in our budget at $9 million. It needs to be captured at a more reasonable and acceptable price, I think. So, that might be the only amendment that I see at this point. So,
I'll add on that. If we budget 9, they're not going to be able to spend anything that we don't approve in a contract by resolution anyway. So
say it again. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, even if we budget 9, and the price comes out to be 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, no one's going to be able to spend the 9 until the resolution is passed approving that contract. So we've got protections in place.
But it does tie it up, though, does it not? Earmark that.
Yes. Yeah, we're tied up on paper. Yes. Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Commissioner, I hope to have the appraisal back this week, hopefully. And so as soon as I get that number, I'll be sharing it with the commission. And if it's just worlds apart or whatever, and the commission says, hey, doesn't look like that's going to work out, I can always get back with the owner.
Lucky for us, we have a 5th Monday, so we'll be taking an additional week off between meetings to get back to the second.
I got a question from Matt.
Yes, sir.
Matt, I noticed there's a Curd Road signal, like 500, and I don't have it up.
Yeah, we kept the construction funding in there from last year. As I've said to many of you, we're kind of on hold with that project because if this City Hall project happens first, a signal is going to be
That's my question.
prioritized here more than that one. And they'll be too close to have 2 signals.
So that would, if that's a developer responsibility to add the light, I'm not saying it is at this point, but typically they are.
Yeah.
Then
That will go away.
that goes away. That 570.
Essentially, East Hill will be an alternate route for Curd Road because East Hill is going to extend to Clemens and eventually to Golden Bear. So it works. If there's a signal here, Curd Road traffic can redistribute to
So if
East
we did,
Hill to get out safely.
yeah,
So,
no, I get it. So, okay. So that if we do move forward with,
correct.
it's going to save us $570 some odd thousand. So, which is, I think, pretty good deal.
Yep.
Okay. I'll have more, but that's
Okay.
All right. We ready to vote? Commissioner Mullally.
All right, 2 more things. On page 7, I noticed where the 3 million was increased on the Lebanon Road. 500,000 was already in there. So that stayed in the appropriations column. But I noticed the 25 million for the Central Pike interchange was moved from appropriations into the debt column.
I think it was there last time. I may have included it in both columns and just took it out of the appropriations. But that was just a placeholder for the borrowing, assuming whatever
Assuming
you
all
guys
25
decide to borrow.
million's needed tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, and then on the ARP funding, the 10 million, I got a resolution coming, the first meeting in June, to see about giving 7 million to the police headquarters and 3 million to replace the fire hall, Station 3. Station 3. Mm-hmm. So I got that coming the first meeting in June.
Sneak peek of the agenda, folks. Commissioner Hefner.
The agreement, I know we talked about that earlier tonight, but I would like to go ahead and amend the budget to include in City Hall for this year $1 million. And ask Mr. Martin to find it, take it somewhere out of his budget somewhere, not yours department, but I'm sure you can find $1 million. We've added over $1 million in interest income. That may be a good place to maybe earmark that. But I'm sure you'll find it. But that's my motion to amend the budget to include $1 million for, I don't know, we can put it under, I guess, City Hall capital
City Hall
projects.
engineering,
I'm sorry?
City Hall engineering.
Yes. Sounds perfect.
Would we want to put this in the capital projects fund since it is a potential construction project?
Matt's saying yes.
Is there a second on the amendment? Okay, we have a second on that. So what was the question?
Sorry.
That's quite all right. It's late.
Do you want that put in the capital projects fund since it is a potential project and not just in the general fund?
Capital project.
Right, we have a motion and a second to amend the capital projects fund by $1 million to for the, I guess, design and engineering of a city hall. And Commissioner Mullally, you had a comment for it?
And where would it come from?
General fund. Or it could potentially increase the borrowing. 'Cause we'll see.
I did, while I have the floor, I did have a concern. It was a reduction in, let me find it here. Yeah, page 6. At the top, under fund, estimated fund balance, I noticed that it was a reduction of almost $178,000.
That was when PD gave me the rollover, that gave me what they had planned on spending this year. So based
Okay.
on their budget, that's what happened there.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on the amendment?
Add
Commissioner Hefner.
one more thing to this. I mean, this is the right way to do it. You do the design, you get the construction drawings, and then you go get a price to build. Depending on what happens with the Clemens Road building or not, the size of City Hall may be reduced by as much as 50%. We may not need 40,000 square feet. Maybe we only need 20. But starting with engineering, starting with the design, starting with getting the construction plans, and then going out and getting estimates to build based on that is how it should be done, not in days past where we just pass a budget amount to build something or to buy something, well, typically to build something. And then when the construction plans come around, it's like, oh, wait a minute, we missed that by a couple $1 million. Well, why do we miss it? Because we didn't have the construction plans or the engineering done or any of that preliminary work that you do to get to the right number. So this is the absolute right way to do this. Whether we move forward or not, it's ultimately going to save money because more often than not, we go over budget because we're guessing when we're putting change orders. So this is the right way to do it if we're going to get actual costs and not guesstimates.
Yeah, I think the police departments gave us a great model on how to do this.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Back on the budget as once amended. Are we ready to pass this and pick it back up on second reading? All right. All in favor of the budget as once amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Budget passes. And that is the last item under new business. Our last item on the agenda is an appointment. I will be submitting Mr. David Usry's name for the Alcoholic Beverage Board, and I would submit it for the commission's consideration.
Yes, good guy. Motion.
Well, we got to, all right, we're ready to vote on it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? He is hereby appointed then. So it passes by 5. That is the conclusion of our agenda. If there's no objection, we will adjourn. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.